Where are we starting?
Good morning.
Refuse.
We're gonna start with solid waste, Mike Sicali.
No, great.
Just a brief introduction for those who are not familiar with Public Works. We have a various number of budget sectors: highway, water, sewer, building and grounds, Public Works Administration, refuse and recycling. The total overall departmental budget is approximately $19.5 million, making it the largest single departmental budget in the town, other than the overall town budget. We bring a broad staff cross-section with us for expertise and for future training. So, Michael's going to be presenting the solid waste budget.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Michael Sicali, as Jerry said. I manage the recycling department, more or less as the recycling center. Our refuse, our residential and commercial refuse contracts, as well as our grinding operation at Corwin Way, as well as Millwood. This has actually been a quieter year for the recycling department. We've had a couple of ups and downs the last couple of years. Roll Stream, plastic bags, a lot of changes, but this year it's been pretty quiet. The recycling market is still has not improved. It hasn't gotten much worse. I think we've kind of hit a plateau. Still not great. There's a lot of uncertainty going in the future. We don't have to worry about that for 2 more years. Our contract ends December 31st, 2021. So we have some time, so hopefully things improve by then.
Refresh my recollection, what happened with North Castle that had that horrific new contract?
To be honest, I don't know what happened in North Castle. I don't know
thought we
what they wanted to do.
discussed that they had
They had a significant increase,
Yes.
30 or 40%.
Yes.
Like 40% increase, I believe.
But part of that was because the length of their contract, right?
Right.
They only wanted like a
They
two-year
do
contract.
like 5 years or less. We
Yeah.
did 7 years.
Yeah,
I think it's just bad timing for them that it ended right as things were probably at their worst.
You want to do a contract long enough that they can amortize
Yeah.
the cost of their trucks. Because when they're buying Packers to do a contract, they want to have the Packers last about 7 years. So that's why you target a 7-year contract as opposed to a 3 or 4-year contract.
Our food composting program going well, again, status quo. We're doing about 4 tons a month. We've been kind of stuck at that number for a while. It's actually worked out well. It smells it. We all, talk about the smell being bad. It hasn't been bad. It's been clean. Hasn't been a large not a lot of man hours being used to manage it. So it's worked out fairly well. On the news, we've recently filled our permanent part-time position. We have a gentleman started about a week and a half ago. So far, it seems very good. I think it's going to work out really well. That's about all the news and recycling. Into the budget, I guess.
Have you guys done anything with the address? The address, we changed the address on you.
Yes. It starts January 1, right? I was told. No.
I'm not sure.
September.
Third.
So I'll get on that then.
I guess that answers the question.
Right, so
Maybe it's not a problem, you brought it in initially.
The street sign went up September 3rd.
Yes.
But you're working on the calendar for next year.
Yeah, the
That'll
calendar
plow
will
out
show
the
it.
new address.
And I'll have to change the website. It's
Yeah, the
only 2
website,
major
yeah,
items.
too.
Yeah.
I guess that's already.
Yeah. No, I'll take care of it. I usually take care of keep an eye on the website.
Yeah, he can catch a lot.
I'm sorry, I apologize, I thought it was the end of the year.
Did you get the date you needed for the shredding? What was it, community day for next year? You needed?
Yes, that was my question, yeah, just because we put it in the calendar, we like to have the shredding event the same day we have community day.
I'll ask about community day.
Okay.
I forgot.
If there's a
Yeah,
contact out,
2020.
I could always reach out to somebody, I just didn't know
Yeah, I don't have any.
if you guys had it, I know it just passed, but.
Yeah, I think Christina has the date.
Does she for 2020? Okay, great. And we're gonna stick with the 4 shredding dates?
Yes. We do one, like I said, in the first one on community day. I'm sorry, we do it on cleanup day, which is April, we do one in June, we do one on community day, and then we do one in November.
Santa Cruz still pays for 2 of them and then we pick
No,
up.
they pay for one.
They pay for
They
one.
pay for the one on community day, which they generally come and set up a booth. The last 2 years they have not. They usually come and promote it. I remind them they have not showed up
okay.
the last 2 community days. I advertise in the office, let everybody know, let the residents know, it's in the calendar as well.
Right.
Yeah, they pay for the September one.
Okay.
You can start with the revenues or?
Yeah, it was certain revenues on page 105. I lied, 102.
No, that's,
Put your glasses on,
that's the
Mike.
expense.
Well, 102 is the, nope, it's not, it's on 102, yes,
Yeah.
102. Revenues, really have not a lot of changes. The only thing we did increase was the last item, which is our compost and mulch sales. It's slightly up, it's been up the last couple of years, but it's hard to determine because we are trying to preserve our horizontal grinder, so we're not accepting as much as we used to. We are not accepting other towns' yard waste, we're just keeping it to Newcastle to, like I said, try to preserve that machine. It's an expensive machine, rather than buying a new one. We're trying to preserve that.
No, we repaired it, it's a $750,000 machine, so.
There's also new regulations that came out a year or two ago from
Yes.
New York State DEC that limits the amount of material that we can process
Oh,
in
yeah.
our facility.
Yes.
Oh.
So that we could not handle any material from outside of our town
Yes.
anymore
Oh, I
anyways.
didn't know that, okay.
So is this the most we would ever be able to do then, regardless of
Going
the type of
forward,
machine that we
yes.
would have?
With the machine, to preserve the machine and the space that we have at the yard, yes.
But I'm saying even if you had a new machine, if Bart's point is that there's a cap from DEC, like is 50,000 the most revenue we could ever expect to make?
Conservatively, yes.
Yeah, I mean, we've been exceeding that the last few years, but we don't know. So, I mean, Mike's point was this year we're at 79,000 already against a budget of 48. You don't know what storms are gonna come, what waste is lying around that needs to be brought in and processed, so.
So my point is just if we were to purchase a new machine, it's not as though we could double this.
No, I don't believe so, just because of the space, and it like Rob said, it depends on the storms. If things are coming in, I sometimes have to stop accepting items, because we can't, if the machine is down, which it is because it's so old, sometimes it's down, I can't just fill the yard up, so I'd have to stop accepting items, which I from time to time do. So it's a difficult question to answer, just because there's a lot of variations, with the machine being down so often and
I don't think
limiting.
I think the question is there a financial incentive if we were to get a new machine? Is there a financial incentive because you can make double the money, assuming you had a new machine? Because then you pay off money and you profit.
We're still limited on space.
Right, so there's the answer,
So
okay.
if there's a huge storm, I have to cut it off, just cause even with the new machine, and it's not gonna break down, I still can only process so much, and I can only have so much material on the property.
There's a limit on the volume of material that can be handled, however, at the town board's discretion, we can increase the fees for both the grinding operation and for the sale of mulch and compost, so you can increase the revenue stream based on supply and demand.
But I think we took a look at that last year, right, and compared
Right,
our mulch costs against what they were in neighboring towns, okay.
And
We
we
try
do
to
have-
adjust the fees to stay relevant to
Yeah,
even
great.
what's going on in the private market around here.
We do have this on the radar, on the capital project schedule. They're about 3/4 of the way down under the recycling stuff for $750,000. It's not we're trying to make do with what we have because it's a big cost. Now, we do have significant fund balance in the refuse recycling fund, and there's typically not a lot of capital projects that come out of there, so that again could be a board decision whether to fund that solely by the fund balance or a future bond issuance. That would be up to the board, and Mike and Bart continue to update us every year and throughout the year on how the machine is operating, so I think they'll give us a heads up when they think the useful life is over.
We just did repair it, so.
Yes, it's got 7,000 hours on it, it's 15 years old, so you have to assume every year I try to budget, every year I know what we have to do, because there's things that, it's never ending, it's like an old car, it just needs a lot of work.
Yeah.
So, we try to manage, budget as best we can. That is the only major revenue increase, everything else pretty much.
Yeah, the majority of the funding for the district comes from the property taxes, which is a per parcel charge of $440. That amount has remained steady for is it 8 years, 9 years?
About 8 years.
Yeah, that hasn't changed. We will be most likely looking to increase that at some point in the future because when we go to renegotiate the contract, we know that's gonna be significantly higher. We have been using some allocations of fund balance over the last couple of years to, one, because we had sizable fund balance, so to kind of offset the Sandy Pro increases. But that won't be sustainable in the long run, so we will most likely, we'll work with Bart, Jerry, and Mike to propose some kind of reasonable increase. But I think $440 that's remained stable for 8 or 9 years has been pretty good. We managed that pretty well.
Thank you.
Turn to the expenses, it starts on page 105. Everything is pretty much remains the same except you'll see leaf bags. We recently placed an order for leaf bags. We buy them every other year. We buy them in bulk because we get them special made with our, first of all, we get 40 yards. Most of the market is selling 30 yards now. We're still getting 40 yards. The residents seem to like it. And we also get them specialized with our name and important information that helps maintain the machine. So you'll see
Just keep going. Yeah.
there's no budget there, so we won't have to order them next year. We'll order them this year. We buy them every 2 years.
But that's, to be clear, if I recall, the ones that have the name, were we piggybacking with the county or we were getting the size?
were
It was the
not.
size.
We're not
No,
piggybacking with the
we
county.
weren't, but there was a
Against
size
the
issue.
instructions.
It was
It
a
was
size
size,
issue.
but also,
And the instructions.
yeah,
That's
the
right.
instruction that there's no rock
Yes.
to be in it because that's
That's what
really
I
what
would see.
destroys our machine,
Yes.
so.
It's not just the town seal, it's more the, like Joe said, it's the
Right.
information, because we grind, most towns don't grind their own material, we do. So it's important to let the residents know rocks and dirt, it's horrible for our machine.
The other bags, I think, were smaller, no?
Yes.
Wasn't that- right.
Yes. And to get, even to get 30-gallon bags with our name on it, we'd have to order, I think it was 70,000. So it just wasn't, in fact, that's 4 years worth, so.
Again, it's not the name, it's the instructions.
Yes,
Keep-
exactly.
keep-
Right.
Where was I? Next page is 106. First big item we see is contractual services. That's, we do a slight increase on that. That is increased every year with the CPI, October Northeast Region CPI. The October number has not come out yet. The September number was 1.4, I believe, yes. So, we'll see an increase there once the October number comes out, and we'll be able to get an exact number, what our number should be next year. The transfer site charge you see has come in. Last year this time we were very uncertain with going to dual stream. Santa Pro had approached us with some changes.
Which line are you looking at, I'm sorry, just
I'm
so I-
looking at,
Transfer sites on page 107.
107?
70, right.
106, halfway down the page.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
It's come in just because, like I said, last year we were uncertain what was gonna happen with Santa Pro. They approached us that they needed a price increase to compensate for all the changes in the recycling market. So that number is coming in slightly, like I said, just because, we have a better idea of what next year's gonna be. Senior citizen, the senior, the one right below that, that is the charges for the town compensating the seniors for backdoor service. Regular residents pay, I think it's like $70 a month, but our residents, the seniors pay like $19, and the town compensates in that. We've seen an increase in that, general increase in that last couple of years.
I think we expanded the age pool that it was, that we're eligible for it, or
Yeah, I think we did.
we did
Yeah.
some, we took
Yeah.
some sort of action on it
And
last year.
residents
Yeah.
seem to find out about more.
Right.
Yeah,
There's a
good.
lot of residents that didn't know was out there. Residents are, as the word spreads, so we anticipate that number to increase.
Yeah, trying to make it easier for seniors to stay in the community.
Yes, especially with the size of our property here, a lot of people have very long driveways. I tell all senior residents, cause especially when we went to dual stream, they're all complaining, I have to carry another bucket down. You shouldn't be carrying anything, I mean, for $19 a month, it doesn't pay.
We'll come and get it,
Yes.
right? Cool.
Yes.
Good.
Where are we? The next big item is the uniform boots. That is down only because we do that every 2 years.
The boots you do every year.
I'm sorry, you're right, correct, the uniforms we do every other year, boots we do every year.
The boots are safety shoes, safety boots to cut down on accident, injury, problems with feet.
Yeah, you'll see that all throughout DPW and building and engineering also.
And that's more or less it for me. We touched, there's two items, just a reminder, the horizontal grinder, as Rob said, it's gonna be something at some point we'll have to look at. And our contract ends end of 2021. At that point, it's a lot of, there's still a lot of uncertainty in the market, so we should anticipate an increase.
And just to touch on the other capital project that we have included for recycling, and again, this is something that's on the radar, and it's the board's decision, probably along with advice from the SAB and Mike, whether you wanna proceed with the food waste composting and the capital improvements that would be needed to expand that program.
What does that mean?
Right now the program is kind of plateaued.
Yeah.
If it starts increasing, we're not gonna be able to manage it. If it triples, we're at some point gonna have to get a dumpster. That's gonna matter. You can't, it's not sustainable to have 40 toters there, it just doesn't make sense,
So this capital projection is to be able to expand the current
Yes.
program, so this isn't towards
This is not
curbside
for-
pickup or any other
No.
fundamental changes to the way the recovery structure.
Still a drop-off program.
Yes.
Right, you guys were talking about creating some sort of contained area that would have
Yeah,
a
you've got
floor
a porous
drain.
slab
You
and
need, you need a wash bay pad basically to
Yeah.
have a floor drain that goes into the county trunk sewer so you can handle the leftover residue that's inside the toters when you need to wash them out.
Yep.
You also need to have
If
a compactor that has an ozone disinfection system. Because ozone can be used in a compactor to control the odors coming out of the food waste compacting operation. One thing that's limiting us totally for, as a county, is the fact there is no yard waste operation anywhere
In the county.
in the county.
Yeah, I know, it's a huge
They're looking at one in Cortland, Mike can talk to that a little bit, but it's still way off apparently.
They've been saying it's imminent for a year now, it's just not even close. Right now our stuff gets trucked down to Mamaroneck to a transfer station and then whole way to Ulster County. So long term, it's not sustainable the way it is. The county is starting to look into it.
In so many ways, it's not sustainable the way it is.
Alright, when you look, I'm sorry, to be clear, this $175,000, that's not to maintain what we have now, that's if we expand.
Yes,
Yes.
if we expand.
And I say if we expand, by how many, people, how
I mean,
many?
at this point, we're kind of at the mercy of people starting to participate in the program.
Right, but if we had another 50 people doing it, would that make
No,
a difference?
50 people is not gonna change it. It's
200 people doing it.
200, at that point, we wouldn't be able to sustain it where we have.
How many people are doing it on a regular basis, do you think?
It changes throughout the year. Summertime, the people that have been doing it, we've been doing this program for about a year and a half now, the people have realized the summertime is not, it's stinky. There's no way around it, it stinks, so a lot of people cut down in the summertime. But I would imagine there's probably 100 families doing it now, that'd be my guess, based on what material we're getting.
So we could roughly double easy.
Yes, I think we
We have
double,
a problem.
we're, right now we're filling 10 toters, 10 large garbage cans, 20, probably we can handle that, anything past that, I think we're gonna have to start considering our options. What I'm hoping is by the time that happens, the county they're starting to move forward, they're starting to look at our options and they're realizing this is, going forward, this is gonna have to be something we have to deal with. So they're starting to move along with that, I'm hoping that we kinda.
So it's a good problem, quote unquote, to have.
Yes, if the county could work with us and put a facility that is local, it's a great program, it cuts down on the weight of the product, it's good for the environment, but just right now, it's just not, the way we're doing it, long term, isn't gonna work, the county's gotta do something.
Reach out to Latimer and Kaplowitz / whoever.
There's a lot of, he realizes there's a problem, there's a lot of pressure, they're doing a lot of studies and stuff, it's starting this past January is when they really started to make an effort to figure out what the problem is.
They don't have space at the facility in Valhalla?
No.
Well, I know that they just contacted me yesterday, the SAB is planning on sending out a survey I don't know if they talked to you about
Yes,
it with the composting.
Yes.
The Mamaroneck apparently sent out the survey and increased by 40% among people that are doing the program already.
The purpose of the survey is just to spark some interest.
Right, right.
It's, you know, it's a way of saying, if it gets out to everybody, there's a lot of residents that aren't aware of it, you know, even though they did a big push. So that's kind of what the SAB's plan is, to put it out there and just remind people that we're doing this, let them know the benefits of it.
Right, but even if it goes up 40%, we should be okay.
Yeah.
Because that's how it went up in Mamaroneck, 40%, when they did their survey.
We've actually had a lot of residents as well. Residents stopped, I mean, there's a lot of residents that buy the kit and stop. You know, it's something people think it's a great idea, but like with young especially a lot of families with young kids, it's another chore to do.
It's also not a convenient place to drop it off, but that's an issue we talked about, and I don't know if there's any way around it.
I did it until I accidentally ran it over.
Was it an accident?
He's on camera, so.
Everything's an accident.
Love it, Mark.
Jim, can I come to your place and drop it?
I think you already do.
Touche.
Better,
Touche.
better.
You win.
Okay, moving on. Alright,
That's all I have.
great, thanks
Thank you.
Mike.
Mike's gonna
Always a
Mike's gonna
pleasure.
stay the highway budget just to give us a feel for what's going on for the future.
Absolutely.
Is that what we're doing next, highway?
Highway, yes. And Bart will be presenting the highway budget.
Everybody's favorite.
Okay, so starting on page 78, you see there's a basically 7.65% increase in the property tax, roughly, right, we're up for
Yep.
the highway fund, and that's to account for the increases that will go throughout.
Let me just talk about the next section of the revenue, and this would pertain to all four of the major funds, the general highway, refuse, and the water fund. So, number one, I wanna comment about interest earnings. You'll look, and they're not as large a part of the highway fund because the fund balance isn't as large and there's not as much cash. So the general fund, I'm getting a lot of the float from the school tax money that sits there until I have to allocate it, or the county tax money. So, you know, the general fund definitely gets more interest than the smaller funds, but water fund has significant fund balance. So when we sat here a year ago, the interest rates were rising, we weren't sure where they were going. We saw them at the end of last year, beginning of the year, raised significantly, so the money that we had invested was paying off. You'll see that in all the funds, the actual for 2019 far exceeds the budget. We went a little bit cautious though for 2020, we didn't go all the way based on what we're seeing now because the rates are coming back down. A couple reasons, the rates are coming back down, number one. Number two, we're gonna have less cash on hand. We borrowed in 18 for this project, we expected it to be done, we expected it to be paid off. It wasn't, so the money was sitting here longer and I made more interest on it, so that's just why you will see a budgeted increase over those four funds, but you won't see a huge budgeted increase that would be related to what we're making this year. The other comment in this category use of money is the dividend earnings from the workers' compensation. So the first year that we received the dividends, I just kind of netted it out. It wasn't for an entire year. So, you know, I had the expenditure, I netted it out. This year's dividend earned from last year's policy was about $160,000. So I really need to show that as revenue, as opposed to the expenditure. So you're gonna see that, and I budgeted that way going forward. The budgeted figure represents 20% of our premium. That's the lowest, if you look at the 25-year history that RJ gave us, the lowest premium that that the plan has ever paid out has been 20%. And it was 20% multiple times in that time period, maybe 5 or 6 times. Again, my cautious budgeting says we'll give it 20%. This last year we earned 40 or close to 40%. It's not gonna be that way. If you look at the chart, it's not that way every year. It's dependent on everybody, not just our performance within the plan, but the entire safety group's performance. So we'll budget that conservatively at 20% and hope to exceed that. So I just wanted to make that comment because you'll see that in all the major funds, in the revenue line. Sorry, Mark.
Thank you. So, next is the sale of equipment, and that's, items that we auction at the end of their useful life. We haven't done that, yet this year. We typically do that around November. Probably would expect around 5,000, hopefully maybe a little bit more. Insurance recoveries is for when somebody hits like a guardrail in town and we collect money from their insurance or there's damage, and we collect on that to offset our cost for repair. Going on to the next page, there's interfund revenue section at the top. Those are all the same. And about halfway down the page, the state aid CHIPS. So we get CHIPS funding every year. For this year, the CHIPS was about $222,000. We have also been getting the Paving New York money, which started a few years ago, and that's a little bit over $50,000. And then additionally in June, they let us know that we got extended winter recovery money of about $43,000. So all total, that ended up being a little bit over $300,000. The one is in here is the one that we rely on. That's a guaranteed program, and that's the state aid CHIPS. So the Paving New York, typically we have been getting every year. That's still relatively new, but the extended winter recovery is totally dependent on how the winter goes. That's why that is not put in here. So if we get that, we can do a little bit of extra paving like we did this year.
Yeah, I mentioned that last night. I think it's been 2 or 3 years running that we've received those funds, and we put it back into the road paving, so.
So why aren't we including the Paving New York in here?
Because
It's
we
not
don't deal
guaranteed.
with
It's
it.
not a guarantee.
Alright.
And the extreme winter recovery even less certain. In fact, they told us originally we weren't getting that this year.
Right,
That's
and then in
correct.
June, they came around.
Yeah.
You never do.
That sounds right.
So then the next line,
Sort of nice, like
the
a holiday
county,
present, like, wow.
the state and county roads, snow removal, that stays relatively flat. We have a contract with the New York State DOT for snow and ice removal on 117, Route 120, and Route 128. And we also do the county roads in town, which are Washington Avenue, Hines Bridge Road, 7 bridges, and a small part of North State Road also. So then the bottom section is the other sources of revenue, and then the next page sums everything up, and that closes out the revenue section of the highway budget. So on page 81 starts the expenses. The salaries have gone up. There's a 1.85% contractual increase with CSEA for 2020.
And just to comment, the 1.85%, but the increase is 2.17. We talked last night a little bit about the steps as well. So the 1.85 is just the cost of living year over year. If there's any of the employees, and certainly there are within that group that move from one step to the other, obviously that would increase that amount above the 1.85%, so.
The overtime, we're expecting to stay flat, and the longevity is going up slightly, and the part-time help staying flat. We get generally part-time help, seasonal employees in the summer when a lot of our regular full-time people are on vacation, and they augment our staff and do a lot of traffic control when we're doing projects around town, drainage and paving. And we had a couple of great people this summer, and one of them was interested in coming back. I think he already put in his
His
application.
application for the,
So,
yep. A young gentleman lives in town, he was a great worker this past summer. We said we'd like to have him back, He actually showed up
Yeah,
yesterday afternoon with an application for starting in June.
So I think that's,
Great.
where's the
It's nice to see younger generation that wants to work. That's very important.
Yeah. It's Slater's actually not in the highway, it's in 14.
Why'd you look at me?
Just a second.
I am younger than you and I wanna order a deal.
So the next line is departmental equipment, and we have $40,000 in there, and that's for some various stuff that the highway department needs. We trailer a lot of equipment, and we're in need of a couple new trailers. We've been doing a lot of inspection on our drainage, and we'd like to get a small camera system that will aid us in doing that efficiently. So those are the equipment items that we're looking to purchase.
You usually, some of your vehicles, you rotate down to recreation, is that how it usually?
Town hall.
And town hall.
So we had talked about it, that there is a vehicle replacement schedule?
Yeah, somebody want one copy?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just, 2 extra copies.
We should probably discuss the vehicle replacement schedule a little bit at some point, because it's not a set in stone process.
Yeah, it's a recommended,
understood.
it's our best guess
It's a
going
moving
forward.
target, best guesstimate.
So we don't have any vehicles budgeted for highway next year out of the operating budget. Then we get down into supplies is just materials we use to do our work. And then the next line, and one of the larger lines in the highway budget, is the road paving. This year we requested an additional $200,000, and that is in here. That'll
So this line along with the CHIPS line?
With the,
represents
the permanent improvements line,
Yeah.
on the next page, or if you flip over pages, it's actually 2 pages down. But those kind of, when we quote a number for road paving, we combine those two. The permanent improvements is typically where we charge any reclamation, if that has to happen in the roadway. I think this year we actually didn't need any reclamation, is that correct?
That's correct.
So basically then the money allocated to the permanent improvements line just gets pushed over to the road paving line.
So Jerry, I think when we spoke, and tell me if I'm wrong, you're starting to catch up for reclamation purposes for the years of sort of dormancy, so it's no longer reclamation paving, it's,
It's strictly just overlay paving.
That's 9+.
Because we got the roads that totally failed during about an 8-year hiatus and lack of paving operations. We basically caught up with the totally failed roads with the reclamation process, and now we're going with strictly overlay of roads. We can get more paving done that way, and we've noticed that the roads that we're overlaying, we can create the crown necessary. When you pave a road, the first step to do with any kind of road paving operation is drainage, drainage, drainage. And sometimes people wonder why we've only done half of a road, because we're only able to get half the drainage done in that road segment. Whereas we'll spend the next winter and spring season getting caught up in the drainage in the other half of the road. A typical example is Taylor Road. We did part of Taylor Road.
So many people this explanation.
Yeah. So anyway,
See the fun facts
with,
there?
with road reclamation, one thing it does, it changes the profile of the road. This is an exaggeration, you want a crown on a road, very exaggerated. You want the raindrops to hit the center of the road and to go off to the sides. A lot of our roads that had failed in the past had configurations like this, again, exaggeration. So the water would sit in the middle of the road, would freeze thaw, and just destroy the whole road base. Now we've gotten to the point where most of our roads have a moderate crown, and we can actually do a true and leveling paving operation, whereas the paving operation contractor can put down a layer of pavement down the center of the road, like in the morning, and then come back in the afternoon, and then has a crown built in, so when he paves the road, you can actually have a crown surface. So that's what we're doing right now as opposed to reclamation.
so then you'll be able to pave more because you're not, so the numbers, the pavement we've done in the past, a lot of them catching up, but it's not indicative of what you can do going forward.
Correct. Plus we've had the good fortune from the monies in the state legislature, Pave New York and the expended winter funds, extreme winter funds, that have boosted our paving operation. Plus over the last 6 years, we've had a generous town board that's increased our paving budget, period, it's plain and simple.
What, whether we come to this agreement or not, you know, what is, you're getting an extra $200,000, if we added $500,000, if we bonded for $1 million or 5 million, making up numbers here, because I need you to explain, what can you do in a year in terms of
Well, it depends on,
dollars and what would it take to get up to speed in terms of getting us where you wanna be and getting
it
things
would
done?
depend upon a number of factors. We have to be able to get caught up on drainage, because I appreciate the town board would want to bond monies if we have the ability to bond money, however, we have to have the ability to prepare the roads in advance. So we have like a limit on that. If
What does that mean, we have a limit on that?
There's only so much money.
We don't have the manpower, the staff power to take and do massive number of drainage projects to get like a $5 million road paving thing in 1 year. We just don't have the manpower to take and do all the drainage necessary. So I would not wanna recommend to the board to waste a large, capital investment. And we'd have difficulty contracting out the drainage because our current staff does the drainage. So the trade-off would be, do we hire
Contract out and get in work.
do we hire additional staff to do additional drainage, to do the additional preparation for the roads themselves, to do I'm picking a number out of the air, $5 million road project for 1 year? That would be a very difficult logistical operation. We could do it, but we'd have to hire additional staff members to do additional drainage work to prepare the roads in advance.
And what does that mean, 2 people, 7 people?
Probably 4 or 5 people.
So you're hiring with pensions,
We're
long-term,
hiring a
and then-
full crew, basically.
Right.
And it can be done. I'm not recommending that at this point, but it can be done.
When you
But
say
then-
drainage,
then I'm sorry, so you're saying that the town would have 4 new employees, pensions in perpetuity,
Correct.
union, all that, so then what would be, just thinking out of the box, what would be something that's conceivable and realistic to do in a year? What does $500,000 do? What does $1 million do? What is,
Well,
what's the number that would be done in a year?
with the existing staff, we could probably handle a $1.5 million paving budget.
1.5, not in addition, in total.
No, total. I'm being conservative, we possibly could handle more, but it just, knowing the the crews we have, we could handle that, I believe, 1.5.
Yeah, we've been spending a little bit over $1 million for the past few years, so we have the 700,000 that's in here, and we've been getting a little bit over 300,000 when you combine the CHIPS, Paving New York, Extended Winter Recovery. So hopefully we'll get those 3 from the state again, and with the 900,000, we'll be at 1.2. So we're getting up there, and with that money, we've been doing, this year we did about 5.5 miles of paving.
But isn't
And now that
what
number
Jerry's
also
saying?
changes because the cost to pave changes also. When we first started paving a lot again, 3 or 4 years ago, we were paying like $93 a ton. Now we're paying almost $110 a ton.
Is there a better way to look at that, because as Jerry explained before, you could have a 16-foot width road, you could have a 30-plus foot width road, so mileage is not really the number, it's how much
Averages out.
paving you put down. And also now you could probably do more if you don't need to reclaim.
Correct.
So, but can any of this be, you just before about contracting out, at what point is there the cost benefit analysis here, to contract out and get it done? Can you contract the
Drainage? No.
the drainage, that has to be in-house?
That has to be
That's
done
union
in-house.
So we can't contract out.
Is all of it union work from start to finish? So the drainage?
So the
plus
drainage,
the-
yes, not
so when
not
you
the
say drainage,
reclamation.
what are they
Not the
actually
rec-
doing,
right,
Terry?
right,
What
not
what
the
is the work they're
reclamation,
actually
not
doing?
the
Okay, what you do is when you go down an example road in town, for example, let's say, just pick Taylor Road, because it's a hot button topic. Taylor Road has got a steep hill with a weird profile on the road. When the road was built 80 or 90 years ago when it was first built, they never installed a lot of catch basins and pipes across the road to handle the drainage coming down the hill. So what has to be done there is we have to work out a plan, and a lot of it done with our staff in-house and some help from the engineering unit from Bob Cioli and Terry Rowe. Installing catch basins along the way, partway up the hill, to transfer water from one side of the road to the other, and to bring it down to where the triangle is by Annandale, then to discharge it into the swamp that's just to the west near the country club property. That we can do, and we've got that plan for this spring and this winter and this spring to get Taylor Road ready for paving next year. That's a typical example. You've got to install catch basins and pipes. Where there are existing catch basins and pipes, you have to explore those. And Bart touched upon this, is that we have contracted out with a video camera company, Underground Utilities, where he sends a camera on a little dolly through the drain pipes to see if there's the condition of the drain pipes. Some drain pipes are concrete, and if the joints between the concrete pipes have not settled, those concrete pipes are good for 100 years or more. Other drain pipes are galvanized iron. The galvanized coating, the zinc coating on the iron, gets voids in it and then gets corroded, and those pipes tend to collapse. Other types of pipes are plastic. Plastic pipes are okay if they're a deep enough burial, so you've got adequate cover. So the piece of equipment that Bart mentioned to get the video equipment so we can do this stuff in-house would save us time, because the underground video guys are very well booked up. You have to book them up sometimes months in advance, and then we have to just rely upon our own guys looking through the pipes and make an assessment. The first time you'll see, for example, a pipe failure in areas by a catch basin, you'll see like little holes in the pavement by a catch basin. That means the side of the catch basin where the pipe interface is collapsing. So with the drainage, you want to deal with existing catch basins, rebuild them, repair them, install new ones, repair or replace existing pipes, and then install new pipes. So that's the whole drainage issue. You want to go to an area where water is standing, and you want to take that water off the roadway so the water doesn't stand on the roadbed and ruin the paving job you're doing now. We've taken very deliberate steps to invest taxpayers' money by doing the drainage work first. And that's what limits our ability. If you handed us a big pot of money for paving, I'd turn part of it away, to be honest with you. I would not responsibly accept that kind of money for more money than we could handle for doing the drainage. It's just not a good investment.
And
I feel odd turning money away for, hypothetically turning money away.
well, that's
from
right here,
paving.
to explain that, and another thing we discussed is sealing that you do.
Yes.
Are we staying on top of that so that we don't have to?
Yeah, we
reclaim in
are
the
staying on
future?
top of crack sealing, and we've got more people trained on it, which is good. The crack sealing typically takes place in the fall and during the mild winter days when we've got downtime between snowstorms and we've got sunny temperatures and you've got about 45-degree air temperatures. You can do crack sealing at that time.
And there was also there's been talk about the 5-year, 10-year plan, schedule for these roads. We talked about that years ago.
They would not pass muster.
Posting a list like that, I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
If you're posting a list of roads, it's a self-defeating purpose, because there are too many issues what happens as far as drainage and as far as if you've got a weird winter in one area of town. For example, if there's a very bitterly cold area where they've got frost heave, where you've got underground high water table under a roadbed, and you've got frost lenses where the actual road heaves up, that may advance the road paving operation in that neighborhood where it wasn't predicted for 3 or 4 years down the road. So if you start posting a schedule, you really can't do it because it changes too often. And that's we've noticed. I purposely have kept the supervisor and town board in the dark about what our plans are, because I didn't want the fallout from residents saying, well, my road needs to be done this. We have a logbook of all the road paving that's taken place in the last 35 years. We know when each neighborhood was last paved. So we know when that took place. We know what the conditions of the roads are by driving them. And sometimes we end up paving a side road ahead of schedule because the main road is being paved at the same time, and it makes no sense to go back and just do a small side road when the whole main road's being paved, a collector road. So we can post schedules, but then people will be annoyed
But it doesn't,
when you don't do the schedule. And you have to backtrack and explain that the schedule is a fluid situation, and things can change on a roadbed. For example, if you're putting a water main in a road, which we're about to start on, up in Kisco Park, that road won't be paved this year because it's too late for paving. However, we're looking at the neighborhood of Kisco Park in general to see whether there's enough drainage work that can be done. So if we do a paving operation either next year or the following year, it would make sense to do all of Kisco Park at once. For example, this past summer, we worked extensively in the spring and summer on drainage projects and problems in Stanwood. We got all the drainage projects done, we got all the problems done, and we got the whole neighborhood paved. It was right on about the 30-year schedule for Stanwood. They're a very low volume neighborhood, highly densely populated relatively, but their roads hadn't been paved for 30 years. And so it was taken care of.
I have one other question and then I swear I want to ask another one until the next one. What are we doing to protect ourselves, because as you know, from my road, the contractor did a garbage job and
Right.
didn't do the right depth.
Right.
And you don't know that until a couple years later and all of a sudden my road is cracking to high heck and already falling apart.
What we're doing is.
What are we doing now to make sure that, because you're not sitting there watching them the whole time or, you know.
Well, besides watching the whole time, we're also keeping retainage. We retained for a year, was it 5%?
5%.
5%. And we do not release it until we go out with the contractor the following year and say, look, are there any issues here? And so we've been fortunate with the current contractor, Clove. There have not been any issues. Unfortunately, the contractor that did your neighborhood is all too familiar with us.
Alright, but so what, the protections are there now?
Yeah, they are.
Alright.
Thank you. Sorry, Bart.
I have one more quick question, I'm sorry. There
And
was-
it's, I'm sorry, just to, I wanted to finish that out, we have added protections, we could add more, but we have to be careful about that because it will just drive the cost up even more. I mean, you could put in a lot more protections, but your cost is gonna double,
And then you're,
so you have to balance it all
That I
out.
understand, just unfortunately happened to do a
also,
very
we
poor
have,
job on it.
we've trained a lot of our younger staff to use the infrared thermometers. We have these handheld infrared thermometers that will read the roadbed temperature to make sure when the compaction process is taking place, the temperatures are optimum, and we keep traffic off of the roads when the roads are too warm. It annoys some impatient residents, but the patient residents realize the benefit, because if the road is properly cured during the compaction process and the temperature is lowered slowly during that process, you get a better pavement job. And that's, in general, most people have been very happy with it. We've had one or two people have been concerned.
One or two? That's not bad.
No, not really, not about it.
Very loud about the concerns.
I'm being very diplomatic today.
That was the coolest presentation. You want to ask a question?
Oh yeah, there was another, I just wanted to, another thing we sometimes hear on Facebook.
I'm not on Facebook
No, I understand.
intentionally,
I understand.
intentionally.
You and me both.
Unfortunately, we are. But
I'll go check right now.
I remember with Warrenbrook Road, Old Warrenbrook Road, there was, we had some residents who were adamant against paving, we went ahead and did it, I still remember those lovely emails we received from some of those residents.
Yep.
There's two.
And I know, I still get sometimes some nice emails, but putting that aside, there's another road in town that sort of has, some residents think it's the same issue, Hogs Cross.
Heights Cross.
Heights Cross. There are
Hates
the
Cross.
Hates Cross, I'm sorry. There are
Hates.
some residents that think
It's right.
it's not being paved intentionally due to the wishes of some residents. Some,
That's really not the case.
I know, I just wanna hear you say
Is
it.
there dirt? Is that?
The
No, it's
basic,
not dirt,
No,
it's
it's
just,
not
it's just,
dirt.
but it's a mess.
It's oil and
Yeah.
chip.
Yeah.
yeah, the existing road surface on Hates Cross is oil and chip, it's been that way for decades. The biggest problem at Hates Cross Road is there's no place to get, in certain stretches, there's no place to get the water off the road. If you drive down the road, the road profile, in many cases, besides being windy, the road profile is like this. Okay,
That may be it.
the shoulders and edges of the road are above the paved surface. Where do we send the water? And it's one of the very oldest sections of roads in town. A lot of the road width, the right-of-way width is not even 50 feet. So we can't even just cut the shoulders of the roads away to lower the shoulders and then send water off into people's front yards. There's just no place to put the water. So we do the best we can to maintain that road. Ideally, we would have a capital project to address a road like that, which would be bigger than our highway budget. We would cut down the shoulders of the roads, remove the stuff between removing 5 to 10,000 cubic yards of material. You have to pay to get rid of it. Cut those shoulders back, build the crown up, and pave the road. That's ideally what you'd do. We can't recommend that. The best thing to do is ongoing maintenance on the road. We have the same thing with another neighborhood, Tripp Street. Top of the hill of Tripp Street, when you go past the area where it's nice and wide and that long hill stretch coming up from the north, from Shether, there's a section of Tripp Street that's windy, narrow, and again, it's an old, nearly Civil War era wagon path, where it's the road itself. You go drive down the road, the stone walls, the rock edges, and the shoulders are above the pavement, so the water sits there. And a lot of the people on that road bought houses on that road because of exactly that countrified effect, and there's very little traffic at all on that road. There's very little quick traffic on that road. Again, you could take and bring that road up to modern day standards, but you'd have to spend a couple $1 million, which is more than our highway budget for the rest of the paving for everybody, to upgrade the road.
Well, apparently we don't have the staff to do it anyway.
I'm sorry, what?
And we don't have the staff to do it anyway.
That's correct.
I see.
But you could actually do a capital project that involves drainage, but you could do it, you'd have to have a design thing, you'd have to have a bid, you'd have to have a mini hamlet project on a road.
Just for one road.
For one road. And the question is, once you do that, that road then becomes like 20 some odd feet wide, becomes a high volume cut through, and people will use it as such. So there's a balancing act.
And people don't cut through Hates to Cross that
I
much.
do.
Do you?
All the time,
It's not the greatest road.
every day.
Really?
Yeah.
But anyway,
Rarely I do.
Frequently, we get our complaints of our road is poor, then we pave it, then we get the complaints everybody is speeding here.
Oh, yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
cycle.
you can't speed on that.
You can't speed on
anyway.
a crash.
we had an interesting situation where Spring Valley Road a few years back, we paved.
We know.
And Spring Valley Road,
Yes, yeah. We just actually just dumped,
hear
just
about
spoke
that?
to the chief a couple weeks ago.
and when we did speed checks on it before it was paved.
Yeah.
The police department did the radar checks, and right after it was paved, the speed increased. It increased about average of 10 miles an hour. And the road had to be done, but so we posted some curve signs and some speed limit signs out there.
Thank you.
Alright, so the next line is road maintenance material, and that's primarily materials that we use for fixing potholes. And one of the tools we use to decide which road is gonna be paved is which road has been receiving a lot of pothole material. Julia keeps a spreadsheet for us, and we can take a look at that in the spring and see if a road is getting a tremendous amount of material and pothole repairs, and that one would move up on the list.
And we
for
can't
a road to
emphasize,
be paved.
and we can't emphasize enough how much Julia puts together the data that we use to determine changes to the road paving direction. She works with Charlie Bergstrom, the highway foreman, taking all of the weight tickets for blacktop patching. They're all tagged by road area, road length. We know which roads are receiving the most paving, pothole repair patching. That will bring, as Bart said, they'll bring it right up on the list, and that all has to do with accurate record keeping done by Bart and Julia. Sorry.
So, and the next line is drainage, and that is for materials that we use for the projects, for pipes that need to be replaced and blocks to fix catch basins. Next line is training and instruction, Every year, we send 2 people at least from the highway department to the Cornell Local Roads Program in Ithaca, which is a 3-day program they put on that has workshops on all types of tasks involved with maintaining and repairing roads. They have workshops around the state throughout the year that are 1-day workshops, and we send staff to those as well. The Cornell Local Roads Program, it's a local technical assistance program. It's funded by the Federal Highway Administration, and they're really a great resource for us and for any highway department in the state. On page 82, there's just a meal allowance, gasoline and diesel, which are all flat. Page 83 is permanent improvements, and that is the CHIPS money that we receive and generally use for paving roads.
One thing you may not realize about the CHIPS funding is that you see a $200,000 money expenditure coming from the state of New York. However, in order to get that funding, Julie has to put in quite a number of hours of just doing governmental paperwork to justify the fact that we're entitled to that funding. And she puts in quite a number of hours during the workday, putting together a package that's then submitted to the Region 8 DOT just to receive the monies. So it's all well and good to know there's a couple $100,000 coming to us, but there's a lot of administrative paperwork that's being done by our staff to recover those funds.
So page 84 starts the highway equipment maintenance section of the DPW highway, which is the mechanic shop, the central garage. The salaries are about the same. There's the contractual increase.
But let me just mention with the salaries for that, so if you remember, we added a mechanic this year because we had some staff shortages due to some personnel issues, and we do expect a retirement in that position. So we were at 3, we added 4 for the end of this year and beginning of next year, and we anticipate early next year a retirement, so that would bring the staffing back to 3 on a permanent basis.
I don't think there's any major changes in their lines from last year to this year. Their departmental equipment is tools they buy. They need a new air compressor in their shop. Communications is for radios that are in all of the trucks and at the DPW yard. We use those primarily during snowplow operations. They're very important to maintain because it's one way we can communicate and everybody can hear what's going on. We rely on maintaining that system ourselves. We use cell phones a lot for the rest of the year, but during snowplows and storms and hurricanes and whatnot, it's very important for us to maintain our communications ability by radio. And there's the supplies, training, vehicle maintenance, tires, paint, those are all about the same as they were last year. There's no significant changes there. And the same for the oil, grease, solvents, sweepers, hazardous waste. Are there any questions on the central garage operation? All right, page 86. See about a little above halfway down, there's brush and tree work, and that's a substantial part of the highway budget also. There's a lot of trees around town here, and a lot of them are not in good shape. We primarily do a response to complaints, and if we see a tree that's hazardous, we'll also take a look at that. But this line was bumped up last year, just because of the reality of us overrunning it constantly in previous years, and this seems to be a good number where we can maintain our trees.
Why is the actual so far off from the projected for?
Well, we're not done yet, so there's actually there's actually a list that's been submitted that they are working on, so they're,
This is actually one purchase order actual, there's 2 other purchase orders in the hopper, about the same amount, minimum. And there's a third purchase order that'll be coming out towards the end of the year.
yeah, so there's,
That will
we
be
should
spent
reach
this
that
year.
number, yeah.
We'll easily reach 175.
The next line I wanna point out, and this was my addition, it wasn't Bart's or Jerry's, this Minkel Dam inspection maintenance line. We increased that, we had $5,400 per year for the inspections there. We put $40,000 in because, as we talked about, there's gonna be some maintenance required and some ongoing issues, some inspections and that type of stuff involved with that,
So we can't yet say what the long-term forecast is for that because we don't know yet.
No, correct, correct, I mean, obviously, we have, again, it's something that's on the radar on the capital projects.
But we don't know if it's gonna be decommissioned
Correct,
or
we don't, so
fixed
if,
or.
you know, if you look, I put up here, you know, it's about $1.1 million, and I think that's if we're gonna take it down, I think that number was like $1.4 million or $1.6 million if we're gonna leave it up. So, and again, those are estimates that are about 2 years old, when, you know, we felt like we were closer to making a decision, and then we now had to have the hydrology study and the study of the wells, the impact of the residents living in that area.
What year was that gifted to us again?
Nah,
Gifted?
I don't know.
Gifted to us?
That's the gift that keeps on giving for sure.
But the increase in the inspection, I mean, one way or the other, you're gonna have to make a decision about whether it's staying or going, so how long will
Correct.
the increase in inspections be? Is that this year
I mean,
only?
I would hope it would be this
Yeah,
year
right.
only, because I would think we would have a decision next
have
year. I
to,
mean,
yeah.
I understand that hydrology study, I haven't been involved, that's the
Eminent.
engineering office, but I think, Jill, can you comment on the hydrology study around the Minkel Dam and the when we expect the results back from that, and
We should be getting it back this month, so we were waiting for hydrology, and once we get the results of that, then we're able to make a determination as to whether or not removing the dam is a viable option.
And Ivy's question was just whether this, in the operating budget, the $40,000 would have to continue, and my thought is I would not think so
Yeah.
past next year. Because we should have a decision on what we're going to do, and then we'll have a.
Is it the DEC or DEP? I'm always-
DEC,
can't get them straight. So the DEC has requested this additional maintenance while we make a
Yeah,
determination.
no, I know, right.
But we're hoping to make the determination sooner rather than later because we need to move on this. The other problem with the dam, I don't know if Rob mentioned it to you, is that it's not covered under our
Yeah,
insurance.
right.
And so it remains just a problem. We need to make a decision, and we're just, as soon as we get that hydrology study, we'll be in a position to make an informed decision.
I just wanna call that out, it wasn't particularly Jerry or Bart's budget line, it happens to fall in there, but that wasn't their request or their decision to put that money there.
So page 87 starts the snow part of the highway budget. And the overtime line is relatively flat. The salt that we buy off the New York State OGS commodities contract. And they released the number in September, and the salt price per ton is the same as last year, so that's good news for us because we had seen double-digit increases in previous years.
If you look at the expense, I mean, part of that had to do with the volume of storms, but also the cost was going up too,
Right,
so.
yeah, the salt is,
Supply and
the
demand.
overtime, it's always variable, it's weather dependent.
Yeah, supply and demand.
Yes, that's it. So, and we've been using liquid de-icing.
Sorry, what are we buying sand for at this point? Is that for downtown, for the?
No, we have sand on hand generally if there's an ice storm that comes through. The salt will not work fast enough, and it depends on the temperature when the ice storm possibly happens. So we always need to have some sand on hand because if everything iced over, that's what we would put out, sand. Just so you can get some immediate traction.
but we use very little sand.
Right, that had
We've
been.
never used it before.
Well, not never, but it had been removed from the budget from, in prior years, and they requested that we put it back in this year.
And will $10,000 be annual recurring, or what, I mean,
Pretty
or
much.
does $10,000 cover us for a certain number of years?
It's totally variable, depends on whether we get ice storms or not. We had one ice storm last year, I believe it was, we used some
That's a
sand.
good budget number to have in every year,
Yeah,
So why was it absent?
because we didn't buy sand, I think, for 1 year, or maybe even 2. because
Yeah,
we
I
had
mean, there
some-
were a couple years and
Right.
you know,
we also keep the sand out of the weather. We keep it inside our large dome so it doesn't get contaminated.
Are there any questions on the snow removal section of the highway budget? I think that pretty much closes it out.
Refresh my recollection, when you're purchasing this, we're purchasing this as, obviously as Newcastle, but how much are we purchasing with, or in conjunction with other, if at all, with other municipalities to, shared expenses, shared costs?
So, I mean, the salt is just a great example, and that's off of New York State contract. We get our gasoline and our diesel and our heating oil all off of New York State contracts.
So then that's the lowest price.
That's all
they-
shared purchasing is what that is.
We should be able to do everything.
Pardon?
Most of your purchases should be able to run through
Right.
state
Well,
contract.
for example, many years ago, OGS was more heavily staffed and funded, and you could purchase a lot of vehicles directly off of
Right.
OGS contract.
Right.
Now you can't. People are pushing for shared services, they're talking about shared services and shared purchasing. However, they've gutted the OGS budget, which makes no sense, because we could just simply go to OGS and buy a truck right off the thing without bidding. Now, we have to put the extra steps in going to these mini bids, which is a shared service, but it's not as efficient as it was when OGS was fully staffed and fully funded. So Bart had
Takes a lot more time on our part.
a lot more administrative time on Bart's part and on Julia's part to put together a mini bid, put together the memos to the town board to authorize the expenditure mini bid. And
We're supposed to respond to all the dealers
Right.
that submit. and-
right, so if there's truly a statewide push by any organization to do more shared services and shared purchasing, my recommendations to our state legislators would be very simply, fund OGS back to the way it was 10 years ago, and have the ability to take and purchase directly off of OGS for the vast majority of our large purchase tickets. It's not available anymore.
Right.
It just, I don't know if this is practical, but if, we have North Castle, Mount Kisco, Mount Pleasant. If everyone happens to need a similar, or could go to a similar shop, to purchase X, whatever X may be, a pickup truck. And you all know sort of your schedules of 5 years out, granted things may change, does it help to go to make these bids with them, for example, and can we do that? Look, North Castle needs a pickup truck, you need a pickup truck.
Well, in
To
effect,
do that shared bid
in
to therefore
effect,
go
we're
lower
doing it
price.
through the mini OGS process.
So
I mean,
that's
we
the-
get
that's the
some
functional
good numbers
that
for the vehicles that we
piggybacking
buy.
process
Right,
too, I
and
mean, the
piggybacking,
police,
yes.
I think, do a lot of piggybacking on contracts that were competitively bid in other counties or
Right,
jurisdictions.
that's right, we have done that with other
Yeah.
regulations.
On
we do that
County,
frequently.
on
Yeah,
County,
yeah,
we've
that's
done that too.
Should talk about, I think also, for whatever reason, they go out to bid and the municipality that goes out to bid has to write in their bid that other municipalities can
Can piggyback.
piggyback. So apparently those two are the most frequent bidders and allow others to piggyback on their bids.
Onondaga County, Chautauqua County, some Suffolk County expenditures, some of the larger counties have a full-time purchasing staff, whereas they put together a bid for municipalities that can be piggybacked on by other municipalities, but the bid itself has to be advertised to the vendors that this will be a future piggybackable
Right.
bid.
Yeah.
If that's a term, piggybackable, I don't know.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
done with highway then.
Alright.
Okay, we're going to change up a little bit. Julie is gonna make a presentation on the Public Works administrative budget. That's the A1490.
So on page 39, you'll notice the salaries have gone up. That's due to the hiring of,
Wait till we find it.
Wait till we hear.
We'll put mine and stuff first.
It's to the right, yeah.
Do you wanna do this one?
Oh,
Whatever it is.
Not until we have alphabetical order.
so on page 39, you'll notice the salaries have increased for the 2020 budget. That's due to the hiring of a new senior office assistant. As Jerry has mentioned, our budget is $19.5 million, and I think that the work volume would warrant that hire. Overtime longevity has pretty much stayed flat. Part-time help has gone down because we don't expect a full-time intern for the year, but interns do sometimes are right.
And let me just interject, I wanted, the salaries, Ivy had asked that before, the senior office assistant position that's gonna be down there is gonna be split between 3 funds. Because as we're sitting here with all these different departments within Public Works, so it's gonna be split between this A1490 line as well as the salaries line in refuse and water department, so it's 1/3 allocated to each of those funds.
And in this case, this is not the same as we were discussing for the town clerk's office, we're not eliminating part-time
no,
staff
correct.
and hiring full-time, this is an additional.
Correct, so we find the workload down there has been, and Julia's done a great job, but she's I don't wanna say overwhelmed, she's handling it, but there's a lot of work down there. In which kind of, she's preparing vouchers for all 3 of these departments and that position down there had always been 3 full-time. When I first started working here, there were 3 full-time people working down there, and then through attrition, it kinda got down to 1 full-time person and a part-time person, and I think in the past, we've had 2 part-time people even, and
When you started, we had 3 full-time administrative people and 2 part-time
Yeah.
receptionists.
Yeah.
1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon,
yeah,
and for whatever reason, it was cut back.
yeah. So it's kind of all trickled down to Julia, so we wanna restore one of the full-time positions there.
All of the other operational costs have pretty much stayed the same. We don't expect too much of a increase in this.
Do you wanna touch base briefly on your upcoming master's program? Okay. She's scheduled to complete her master's in public works administration, I guess, by the end of the year.
Great, it's exciting.
Yay.
Right, terrific.
Now you have the golden handcuffs. Enjoy working here for the next 5 years.
Yeah,
You can thank this town board for that.
I think that pretty much wraps up the.
We paid for it, didn't we?
I didn't like it.
Okay, that's takes care of public works administration. And Art's gonna present buildings and grounds, the A1620, A1621, and the A5132 budget lines.
So this is for the building maintenance unit of DPW, which has 4 employees. We have a lead foreman, Walter Foss, Chip Fowler, his assistant, who's a master carpenter, Dan Rubino, a licensed electrician, and then they have a driver, Dave DeSantis, who's an all-around helper. So they take care of all of the town buildings, town hall, DPW, train station, Community Center, and they do some stuff up at Chapel Performing Arts Center also. So this primarily is their budget, which handles all of the cleaning service. There's extermination service in here. There's utilities. There's elevator maintenance contract for town hall, and also for the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. So the main components of this, the train station maintenance has gone down since 2018, because we've been renting that out, and we completed the major restoration of the woodwork on the exterior of that building.
Alright,
Are there any questions on this section? Thank you.
Okay, and now we'll jump into the water budget. That's about a $9.6 million budget. It's pretty much totally self-standing. It has revenue streams. Revenue stream of about a little less than $1 million in property taxes, and the rest of it's done by metered sales. It's the SW 8310 budget is water distribution. Then there's the SW 8330 budget, that's water treatment. There's not really any changes, significant changes in the budgeting process. What fluctuates is we have a fund balance that we apportion down like a reverse mortgage, so to speak. Every year we take about $450,000 out of the appropriated fund balance to maintain the rate structure as a fairly stable area. We also receive 2 revenue streams from the Village of Pleasantville. They're a partner with us. They contribute to the fixed operating cost of the treatment plant. They also pay their variable cost of water that leaves the treatment plant.
I wanna make one comment on the fund
Yeah,
balance as
yeah.
well. So typically for years, there's actually 2 components now. One component about 55 that Jerry talked about that kind of finances the operating. And then there's the other component that we were using for the capital project this year. Which was about $300,000 to offset the debt payment related to the capital improvements downtown. I do wanna say that typically in most years, even though we do appropriate fund balance, we typically don't need it, and more often than not, we continue to add to the fund balance, and that's just a function of the fact that the water budget is very difficult to pin down. It's very weather dependent. It's dependent on how much the big users, the golf courses are watering their lawns, how much the residents are watering their lawns, those types of things. So it's very hard to nail down. So we do use an appropriation of fund balance in the event that the numbers don't work out, but typically they do.
so I'm a little lost, cause I think I'm hearing 2 different things. Is it our standard operating procedure to allocate fund balance
have,
on an
yes.
annual
Yes.
basis
Yes.
to keep the rates constant? Or
Correct.
do we only do it when we have to do it when?
We
because
have done it for every year that I budgeted. We
Okay.
have done that. We have appropriated.
And for how long is that sustainable then? I mean,
Well,
I know we have a
we
healthy fund balance in this area.
Typically don't ever use it.
You budget for appropriating fund balance, but you don't use it based on
Okay.
what happens with the revenue stream. Like
Got
if
it.
we have a very hot, dry summer, we have an excessive revenue that we didn't anticipate. You can't budget every year to have a hot, dry summer, because we've had cold, wet summers.
Yep.
Where we've had nobody watering their lawns,
And we don't reach our revenue numbers.
and we don't reach our revenue
And
numbers. And then
so-
strangely enough, we'll live in like a September that's very dry.
Right.
And people are watering their lawns in September.
Right.
So we'll get a
It's
bump
this
in
year.
revenue come
It's
December.
it's kind of a leveling factor,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so,
Right.
and
Okay.
and we have
Sorry,
left
I was
the-
misunderstanding you, so you're saying you budget for it, but you don't end up using
Using
it,
it,
yeah.
yeah.
Correct.
And if you look, the property tax number has remained constant for quite a while, so we did have an increase last year in the rates we
Right.
talked about to help kind of offset any of the expenditures
Yeah.
also, so.
And one thing that hits us every year is New York City for the past 15 years has been doing double-digit rate increases on our raw water. Because they've been justifying all the expenses that they've done, which are, they're warranted expenses. Keeping the aqueducts maintained and repaired, inspected, doing the bypass tunnel underneath Hudson River, those are all good expenses. However, they, in my opinion, they disproportionately target the upstate users because they don't wanna raise the rates of their own ratepayers as much. And
That's, I've heard that.
And we have no
it's just,
recourse.
it's,
Sound
they're the
familiar?
they're the 900-pound gorilla in the room, and they own the football.
Yeah.
So literally, you know, they raise rates and they give us rate reports that are very detailed, done by an auditing firm, but they're skewed against the upstate users. And that's the bottom line.
Where do you see that reflected in the budget?
Oh, the cost?
Cost of water.
Yeah, it'll be in
Cost
the
of water.
8330 when he gets further into
Further
that.
down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see,
I think you're good on the revenue if you wanna jump to the
Yeah.
expenditures.
expenses. Expenses start, the revenue is basically straightforward, and very little differences. Expenses are starting on page 140. That's the 8310 budget, that's distribution system. That's the people that are out there fixing water main breaks in the middle of snowstorms in the middle of the night. If they're lucky, it's during the daytime, during the week, but
When it's warm out.
when it's warm out.
Yeah, not the-
However, most water main breaks take place when it's cold out.
Right. Hopefully we have less of that now with the downtown infrastructure completed.
That's correct.
10% were in this little
Oh,
spot
yeah,
here.
yeah, just this one stretch between, basically, the church right here and the intersection of King and Greeley, we had, over a period of 10 years, about 10% of the water main breaks
In the entire town,
in
yeah.
the entire town.
You have 120 miles of water.
That's correct. That was the driving factor for the Hamlet infrastructure project, the number of water main breaks we were having, and the number of sewer collapses we had. Now, you asked about costs of water.
Yeah, why does it go down?
If you go to page 141, there is a curveball that New York City throws at all the upstate communities. If you use more than the per capita usage of New York City's internal usage during summer months, you pay a penalty. And that's reflected in the excess per capita cost of water fund line that's found on the top of page 141. And again, that's a guesstimate. Because if we have a very hot, dry summer, we will pay a significant penalty in excess per capita. If we have a wet summer, we won't. So we do our best, Rob and I, to budget conservatively to anticipate having a hot, dry summer. Now, even though there's a penalty charged by New York City, roughly 3 times the cost of the water to the town for that usage period, we do receive more monies from the high users. We have an inclining block structure. In other words, people pay like 0 to 6,000 cubic feet, 6 to 10,000 cubic feet, more than 10,000 cubic feet. So if you're a large property owner with 100 sprinkler heads using $10,000 worth of water in the summertime, you're paying a penalty for using that excess amount of water.
Because we are.
And
Yeah.
that, because we are paying that penalty. So we pass the penalty cost on to the high revenue users. That also gets passed on to our golf courses. They pay the penalty.
Yeah, absolutely. And typically in an average year, we pay that June, July, and August. If it's a particularly dry year, we'll pay it May.
May through September,
Yeah.
October. Yeah.
So explain to me why the actual for 2019 is only 70,000 at this point, but the final
Because we haven't been
projection is
billed
still-
for it. New York City is notorious for having draconian rate structures
Uh-huh.
and being very
Delayed in their
del-
invoicing.
delinquent in sending prompt billing.
Yeah.
And then when they send the delinquent prompt billing, they say, oh, by the way, if you don't pay this within a certain number of days, there's a penalty
penalty.
charge. Yeah. And we ignore that because they have billed us so late, it's past their due date for the bill.
But we didn't adjust the final projection down, we still believe it's gonna be
No,
500,000
because we expect,
despite
we
the fact we
expect,
did have a
we
very
expect
dry
to-
summer?
we expect to have
Or I mean, a very
about-
wet summer, I'm sorry.
No, we expect to be paying about $300,000, which is relatively low because it's a wet summer.
Oh, okay, so this should be updated then, where's this?
Well, no, that's
500?
actual, it's just.
No, we
No,
have,
the
the final
final
projection says
projection.
500, but that was, yeah,
Yeah.
we don't know what
We
it
don't know
is,
what
so
it is.
for conservative purpose, I mean, the projection's a projection.
Yeah.
We'll
That can be
go off
adjusted
the
down,
actual, yeah, yeah.
based on the actual, but the actual.
Just trying to
We're
understand.
guessing be about
Yeah,
300,
it's a
300 to
guess.
350. And again, since New York City is so prompt in their billing, we can't budget it during the budgeting process. That's the sad part. If they were more like Con Ed, where they're billed promptly, then we'd have a better handle on it.
You don't hear that every day.
Yeah, really.
Yeah,
Well-
we actually have to chase them down when we're trying to close out the year in February to have the auditors come in
Yeah.
March. Oftentimes, we don't even have the final bills from the prior year before the auditors come, we end up having to
Chase them
book
down,
an
literally.
accrual, yeah, it's.
It's a joke. Okay, let's see, what else?
But I'm sorry, back to what we were discussing before, this line includes only the excess per capita,
Yes.
or
Correct.
this is-
There's-
so where's the rest of the cost?
The rest of the cost is
purchasing?
over the SW 8330, the manufacturing line, that's the filter plant budget.
I see.
We'll get there
We just
soon.
haven't gotten there.
Haven't got there yet.
I'm waiting with bated breath.
No, we haven't got there yet. I know we're keeping you in suspense, it's making the meeting
We
interesting.
have to get her out more. Clearly.
Anyway, I want you to focus in on page 141, there's a budget line called mains and service line materials. You'll see there's 130% variance in there. That's the cost of materials to purchase the materials for the water main on Lower King and Allen Place, and to purchase the materials for the water main on Dogwood Road and Frisco Park.
Good.
So we purchase the materials in-house, we're installing materials in-house, and we're saving hundreds of thousands of dollars. Bob Cioli did a price estimate, if we had turned the water main job over to ELQ for that small stretch on Lower King up on Allen Place, they would have charged us probably about $500,000 for that water main. And we did it for less than $100,000, including materials and labor.
Yeah,
So,
especially.
So how'd you do the whole downtown?
we don't have the manpower, although we did a lot more efficiently than our competitors. So anyway,
Too efficient.
okay, that's basically it on that. What else?
Oh, you.
If there's any further questions on SW 330, we will jump right into the manufacturing of water, which Ivy's is dying to see how we spend our money on manufacturing water.
Behind the curtain, not everybody gets to go here. Alright.
Now, if you look at page 144, bottom of the page, there's a group called VC Pville. That stands for Variable Cost of Water for Pleasantville. Now, we allocate the expenditures of the variable costs at the treatment plant between chemicals, power, Croton backup power, and sludge. We allocate the percentages to Pleasantville. If you go over to page 145, you'll see we allocate the same thing to Newcastle. It's called variable costs, and that's on the middle of page 145. Treatment chemicals, power for pump station treatment plant, power for Croton backup, sludge removal, variable cost of water. So the variable cost of water for Pleasantville, we purchase on the top of 145, we purchase $712,000. We estimate that purchase for Pleasantville's share of water. That's purchasing raw water from the city. Middle of the page, variable cost of water for Newcastle, is 1.853 million. Okay, that's the cost of raw water to be purchased from New York City.
Got it.
And they have been driving the costs up steadily. So that's where your
Jared,
expenditures. Yes,
since we're, at some point this year, we should be using our Inwood pump station in the Croton shutdown.
Yep.
Do you wanna talk about the Croton backup?
sure. Okay. We have the benefit of having two aqueducts going right through our township. We have the new Croton Aqueduct built in the early, middle 1800s. That's the new Croton Aqueduct. And that's 375 feet below ground off of Inwood Road. We have a pump station, Inwood Road Pump Station. There's a shaft there. And we've been in the process of rehabilitating 20-year-old pumps that have literally been sitting in that water stagnant with microbial and corrosive attack on the metals. The pumps are scheduled to be delivered on Monday, the 21st. And to be installed, the one pump to be installed that week with commissioning testing taking place on Friday, the 25th, Saturday, the 26th, and Sunday, the 27th. We will be using a mixture of Croton Aqueduct water and Catskill Aqueduct water for the first week or two, end of October, beginning of November. And we'll be treating those two raw water supplies in the treatment plant. Now, people may have heard reports last fall when New York City abruptly switched the water supply for the Bronx and for northern Manhattan to the Croton treatment plant source for the Croton water. New York City did a great job of building a state-of-the-art filtration plant. They spent $3.2 million. However, they made one serious mistake. They forgot to put a treatment process in that plant to deal with taste and odor controls. They did not install a potassium permanganate system. They did not install ozone disinfection, which also does taste and odor, and they did not install a granular activated carbon. We, in our infinite wisdom, installed potassium permanganate system because we knew that if we were treating Croton water, we installed that back 25 years ago. You need to have potassium permanganate to oxidize the taste and odor precursors. We also installed ozone, which is a great disinfectant, and also is a great taste and odor control chemical. And it is very short shelf life, so it doesn't stay in the water supply. It gets used and expended and is used up. So we built our plant with the ability to deal with taste and odor controls that New York City failed to do with their $3.2 billion filter plant in the Bronx. So they had a big panic last year where there were headlines in the Daily News, the New York Post. What's happening with the water? You're poisoning us with the water. It was a taste and odor issue that was simply not addressed during their construction of their filtration plant. Whereas we built the techniques into our plant 25 years ago, anticipating the very same problem. Because we had exposure to Croton water before our filter plant was built. We used to use Inwood pump station where we would chlorinate, and people would get a funny taste in the water.
Yeah.
An earthy taste. This is before the filter plant went online. You'd have to be here 25, 30 years or more to remember the good old days of unfiltered water.
Cloudy brown,
rusty, disgusting tasting water. It was always safe to drink, strangely enough, but just not appealing. Now, we anticipate we're going to be putting together a small public relations notice through our e-newsletter, letting people know there's going to be a slightly different taste to the water. We actually ran the thing last fall for a week and didn't announce anything. We couldn't taste the difference at the treatment plant. We couldn't taste the difference anywhere nearby. We had one phone call saying the water tastes slightly different, there's something going on. And then we switched off because our 1 week test was over with. So we will be preparing our residents for a slightly different tasting water. However, we do not anticipate the public outrage that New York City went through last fall because they simply did not have any way to treat their water.
And do we have a revised date for the switchover, the shutdown and the switchover?
Pardon?
Do we have a revised
Well,
date?
it's a moving target with New York City.
Right.
Supposedly, the shutdown switchover is gonna take place November 11th through the 14th, supposedly. I'm not holding my breath, because every one of their shutdowns for the last 4 or 5 years up above, on the west side of the Hudson shutdowns have all been delayed for a month, 6 weeks, whatever, due to different circumstances. We will be doing the commissioning testing the week of the 28th of October, but we will be blending Catskill water at the same time during the week. So, once the shutdown does take place, we anticipate being strictly on Croton water for 10 weeks. Now that gets into our variable cost of water, because we have a separate budget line. If you look at the bottom, page 144, Croton backup, electricity. It's very costly to bring Croton water to the filter plant. Right now we can bring 5 million gallons a day of Catskill water by using a siphon that's powered by a 5 horsepower motor, a vacuum siphon that siphons water into the treatment plant. With the Croton supply, we have to pump water, if it's 2 to 5 million gallons, whatever it is per day, we have to pump it 375 feet up in the air from a deep well and send it to the treatment plant. We have to run 500 horsepower motors to do that. So we conservatively budget for a backup electricity cost for the Croton backup supply, bottom page 144, and the middle of page 145. Our budget
Where is it on 144? Is that Croton backup Paving?
Yeah.
That's it, that's Pleasantville's share of the Croton backup electricity. And then in the middle of page 145, there's power for Croton backup Newcastle. That's $138,000. And we expect that we're gonna be spending about $100,000 this year in November and December on electricity in Croton for the Inningwood pump station. It's a very costly operation. We asked New York City if they would mind funding our electrical costs, and they sort of laughed at us. It doesn't hurt to ask.
They did laugh at us.
It doesn't hurt to ask. I'm always good for asking something like that, believe me.
If you remember, Bill Richardson actually showed up at our town board meeting because he was annoyed that we,
We're delaying this
keeping
project.
to the
We were
October.
taking too long.
Yeah, that we were taking too long.
And now they postponed
Now they
their own
delayed
thing.
it, which
Awesome.
we
6
knew
weeks.
they were
We
going
knew
to
that
do.
what was gonna happen. They can't raise the manpower.
Right now, they've come out and said that they've got to import workers from all over the Northeast,
Wow.
and from Vermont, and from Maine, and from Pennsylvania, Ohio, because there's just not enough workers to do the work. The union halls are very busy. So that's the story on the costs of water. One of the biggest costs in the 8330 budget is the contractual services, and that's to pay the Suez contract. There was a significant increase because the plant, the age of the plant, they recommended to us that they add a staff person. Now, the problem with the operations over there is they can't keep people. They, the young men and women that work there get their licenses, and they move on to bigger and better things. They work there 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 years, whatever it is, to get the top certification licenses, and they become plant managers elsewhere. We've had a history of that. The second in command of the Ossining DPW, Andy Tees, is a graduate of our Millwood treatment plant. Dave Rambo, the water superintendent, and he's now the public works director for the city of Peekskill, as a graduate of the Millwood water treatment plant.
John Arnett,
John Arnett is a plant manager up in
Utica.
So what do we do to stop that from happening, from losing, I mean, what can't we just as we instituted with certain training and keeping people on?
We don't own,
They're not our
we're
employees.
not employees.
We're an independent
And
company, yeah.
we don't have the hook for them with the pension,
Yeah.
the union benefits and those types of things. So they're through Suez, so.
Every 5 years when we analyze the costs, we do prepare an in-house estimate of what it would cost to take the employees in-house. And that would stem the tide. However, I can't recommend it because the costs are too high. We analyzed that about a year and a half ago, about taking the whole procedure in-house. And I talked with Rob about it, talked with Jill about it, and it was just too costly for me to recommend to the board that we take the operation in-house.
We
We
revisit
do
that
it
every couple of years.
Every 5 years we revisit it. And we do our due diligence because we want to protect the ratepayers. But, so there's a trade-off, they do lose people. So what happens is that their billing cost is prorated based on their staffing ability. So for example, Diana Caffarelli and I and Rob very carefully examined their payroll to see if they've got the staffing necessary and the license staffing necessary. And if they're not up to full staffing, we deduct from their billing.
Yeah, accounts payable, nothing gets by her. She bounced that the other week and I had said, why aren't you paying that? And then
She
gave
talked-
the description, she said,
talked to
well,
me.
they don't have full staffing requirements that are under the contract, so we're reducing it by the staff member that they don't have. So we're watching.
We're doing our due diligence. Let's see, are there anything really else in water? We've got a couple other still mini budgets.
Jerry, do you wanna touch on water? I'll just whip up the capital projects.
Okay.
And just if you wanna comment on anything more in particular, what, maybe if you have an update on one of the current ones,
No real updates current yet.
so the water going over the parkway, we don't have any,
Nothing updated at this point, not yet.
nothing yet,
Yeah.
okay. So then on here, we have a couple of projects that have kinda, I think most of these have been on the horizon for a while.
Yeah, we're about to go out to bid on the boilers for the treatment plant. The time to award the bid is January, February for the work to begin when the weather breaks. We'll get our most competitive bidding then. That's the $400,000 cost we've identified coming out of fund balance.
I'm more
Yeah.
concerned about the Alpine tank, we've been discussing that for 4 years, that
Correct.
next year, and that's a
Correct.
huge
And
gap,
right, and we actually did an analysis we presented to the board last November about this. And we had a company come in and do a ROV inspection of the tank. They came to the conclusion that the tank did not have to be replaced at this time, and they did not have to be repainted internally at this time. External painting should be done, but that's more of an aesthetic thing. We feel confident that we can postpone this replacement for another couple of years because of the fact that the ROV inspection that took place. They also did ultrasonic measurements of the thickness of the side walls. And if any event, if there was a quote catastrophic failure of that tank, whereby, like for example, a rivet popped out of the tank and the tank started physically leaking, we could shut down that tank and isolate it. And then fully use the Hudson Hills tank. Hudson Hills storage tank, we right now only use about 50% of the usable area of it, volume of it, because it's set at a higher elevation than the Alpine tank. And then we would go to a process where we would do a bid process to demolish and remove the Alpine tank and replace it.
My question to you, Jerry, if that's a huge difference between 1.5 and 3, so
Right.
in lieu of waiting 2 years to pay an extra, 2 years to pay an extra $1.5 million, if in fact it really is that much of a difference to do it now.
See, there's a difference. Bart and I have been studying prefabricated tank technology. Bart knows a little bit more about it than I did, as he went to the latest workshop on it. The city of Beacon just installed a prefabricated tank, where it was manufactured in a facility in the Midwest, where they manufactured a metal tank that's bolted together, but the beauty of the tank is that it's got a 2,000-degree glass fused coating on the outside and inside of the tank. It's actually got a glass bonding. It's not a painted tank. Want to talk briefly about the process? Can you put you on the spot?
Sure, yeah, well, as Jerry said, it's actually, so it's not like the steel is not even coated, the glass is actually bonded, so it all becomes one, and the beauty of that is that it never needs to be painted. I've learned a lot about water from Jerry, and one of the shocking things that I found out is the cost to paint a tank is about half the cost or more of a new tank. So,
Wow.
yeah.
And the reason for that is the environmental cost restrictions.
So can you estimate what a cost is in today's, I mean, you have a big gap here, to one of those prefab tanks, what does it cost for the size that we have and to come out to New York?
It's gonna be closer to the higher end of the $3 million.
Well, the lower end was for painting it, was it not?
Right, lower for painting it.
Was not to replace.
Right.
So this was kind of like Michael
So
Dam,
the
replace or
painting
repair.
lasts for a few years and we're got an old tank anyway, so
It doesn't make sense, a tank that's now approaching,
85 years old.
Right, you'd be better off replacing it and then not having the ongoing
Right,
maintenance.
so
correct.
Or replacement costs.
What is the life expectancy of the glass?
But we don't need to do
Life
it now.
expectancy
No,
of
no,
the
no,
glass,
right, I understand that.
I'm sorry,
No, at least I was just saying.
No, I was just saying we don't need to do it now.
Right, so my
and
question, now that you've sort of clarified
may
it, is
prices may come down too.
1.5 million to 3 wasn't for the same thing, 1.5 was for painting,
Correct.
just to keep it alive, and 3 is to replace it.
right.
But either way, we're talking about roughly 23, 24, that one of these things has to happen.
Correct.
And one would presume that a more responsible thing to do, even though it's double the price, is replacing it.
And we'd need to hire an engineering firm to design this and put the whole bid package together. So that number is based on an industry rule of thumb of what a tank is cost per gallon.
It's roughly,
This does not
tank
include
size.
those other services.
it includes the other services, includes
The engineering.
Right, but
what
they
do
could find, they would be able to get, a better number. So this is based on just a rule of thumb.
the rule of thumb for a prefabricated tank is roughly $1 per gallon. And that includes engineering.
And the life
Right.
expectancy of a new tank?
Pardon?
Life expectancy of a new
Life
tank?
expectancy of a new prefabricated tank
Yes, the
is
glass fused.
about 80 to 100 years.
And part of my ignorance, but we have 2 tanks, correct?
We have multiple tanks.
Well, can you get, so Mike, I guess, could you decommission and get it bigger, it doesn't work that way?
It doesn't work that way.
Because you can't,
Still
just
location.
house it somewhere.
Because the job site, unfortunately, many decades ago, during the planning process, they built a neighborhood on Alpine Lane higher than the tank itself. The cul-de-sac of Alpine Lane, the 4 or 5 houses up there, have to have booster pumps in their basement because somebody misdropped the ball on putting houses above the gravity feed of the tank. In reality, what should have taken place there is that the town should have grabbed that knob of land at the top of Alpine Lane for a future tank site. That's what should have happened. Didn't happen.
Could've, should've.
So we're paying the penalty. However, our town fathers and our previous town board members, and Jerry Fiala is very instrumental in this, and I worked with him on this. We targeted the Hudson Hills Golf Course because we dug out a study from the 1930s from Charles Sells that said a future water tank should go right here off of Hogs Cross Road by the golf course. But it wasn't a golf course then, it was part of raw land that IBM owned to put a future wet laboratory that never took place. So we negotiated with the county and we were able to secure the land to put a storage tank there. We built the storage tank there at 12-foot higher flow line elevation than the Alpine tank because we realized the existing Alpine tank was 12 feet too low because of the problem that was created by the planning process 60, 70 years ago when they sited that neighborhood in Alpine Lane. So the long answer is no, we can't consolidate tanks as the footprint's not there unless the town board wanted to use eminent domain to take some houses down to build a much bigger tank, which
Wind frenzy.
I'm not recommending.
Not this town board, we do
I am not recommending this, just on the record. And in the ideal world, something like that would take place, but I'm not recommending it. So, anyway, that's the long and the short of that.
Hey, can I ask about something that,
Sure.
back off of water, not on water for a moment. We had a conversation, gosh, it's like at least a year ago now, about potentially purchasing the property that's on what used to be Hunts Lane and is now Jim Corman
Yes.
Way between your two facilities.
We still haven't gotten a chance to get in there for a appraisal. Larry Lucchese, who's I guess the executor for the estate, he called me Monday evening, Monday evening, Columbus Day, when I'm at home, no problem. He said he's coming up next week,
Oh, I did not know this.
so we're gonna see if we can get, I'm gonna call him back, I wanna work with Jill and Rob, see if we can get in there with our appraisal. To see, he says, well, we've had an appraisal, you don't need to waste money. He says, unfortunately, we have to do with our fiduciary responsibilities, we have to have our own appraiser, no matter what. Even if they may agree, who knows what the price is.
Did he share his appraisal with you?
No, he's not shared it with me. However, what he did share with me, which I found fascinating, is that the cell phone company that has the property leased behind the thing where the little tower is, wants to extend their lease for 40 years or 50 years, something like that. They also want to get more carriers on that same tower. In addition to which, they're interested in buying the property. So I envision service trucks there and, traffic there and, whoa. Anyway, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna meet with Larry next week and see what he's actually talking about. He said perhaps the cell phone company could be convinced to split the cost of the property. They'll buy the piece out back where they're occupying, and we buy the piece out front. It would lower the cost for everybody, which works for us. And we have fund balance that could be, in the water fund, that could probably fund the purchase if necessary. We did this once before. The water fund bought what's now the recycling garage, and they leased it out to Highway for like a 15-20 year period. There was like a rental thing paid back to the water fund for that parcel. We bought it from Ligori Sanitation, back 35, 40 years ago. Anyway, that's what's happening with that. We're still actively pursuing it, but it's a moving target because they have not settled the estate. I don't think they've officially set up the executors officially because Grace Mashuli died without a will. And it's been a mess. So, but the only promising thing is said, well, look, if there's going to be a split in ownership of the site, you're gonna have to go to the planning board to do a subdivision of the parcel. I believe that's the process that takes place, so. Anyway, and speaking of appraisals, we have.
Should that be reflected here in the capital plan, in our sort of list of potential capital projects?
Rob?
Should that be reflected here in this list of potential capital projects?
I don't even know where to start with the price.
Okay.
I could reflect that in the next version of the budget, but I wouldn't even have a starting point for a price.
Well, if we can see
Well,
his
regardless
appraisal.
of whether you purchase the property though, you're going to have to make, right?
Improvements.
Your current space is not sustainable long
No,
term,
it's
right?
not,
Like
it's
you
not
guys-
sustainable.
We really don't wanna lose out on that property.
Right.
If we put a number in there, I'm just spitballing a number. Say you put a number in there, 1.1 million, okay? I don't know what the true number is. Josh was able to do a drive-by, but you really have to get inside.
Well, but
You
we've
could
got
arguably
TBD
put
up there
their
for something,
appraisal
so-
number in,
We don't have their appraisal.
We'll try to get their appraisal number by the
because
beginning of
ours
next
may
week.
be lower, but you could arguably put in theirs.
We'll try to get their appraisal number by the beginning of next week,
Yeah.
Just a placeholder, so.
just as a
Yeah, I mean, if
placeholder.
we have a placeholder, I can put it there, I prefer to.
Have a real number. Okay, there are some other small budgets that are little tiny water districts and small sewer districts. I don't know if there's any specific questions on them.
I'm sorry,
We've
Jerry,
overrun our time by quite a bit.
yeah, just a quick question, the salt shed
They're
over
the biggest,
at the Millwood
so much
water
shit
treatment
going on.
plant?
Okay, there's nothing going on with that yet.
Okay.
The cell phone company is still in the planning process.
Yeah, they're moving
They're
along
moving
with
through,
it.
and I guess there's a public hearing on public
public-
response to the site.
Right. Is that number anywhere though, as far as the salt shed goes?
We
Construction of it?
we have about 100, we don't have it in the capital budget, we should put it in as a placeholder, yes.
Yes.
We can
Well,
have
there's
that
gonna
for
be an
Rob,
expense to us.
we can give Rob that price next week.
Yeah, we're gonna be building it. Yeah. So it's not
They're not gonna
anywhere.
build it, unfortunately,
No, they're putting in the road, but they're
Yeah.
not putting in the
the structure.
structure. So, I mean, we don't have to do it right away. It doesn't have to be done this
Well,
year.
we could use the money from the cell tower for that too, just, I mean, if we're not using it for the Millwood Park, to pay off a bond like was suggested, if you could, Rob can't do the same thing with the revenue from the cell tower to fund the construction of the
Maybe.
salt dome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you
Yeah,
could do that.
I mean, although,
I mean, there's gonna be
although
revenue, there's no
whether
question
it's
about it.
really for Millwood, we can discuss that, I mean, it is for everyone, the salt dome, but
No, the salt dome
Well,
is
if
to
you're talking that
service
that's gonna
Millwood and
cost
the West End.
$100,000 and we're gonna get $25,000 a year, I mean, you pay it off over 4 years or something, and then the revenue after that point could go to wherever you want it to go to.
It is to help the Millwood and the West End, so they don't do travel time,
Right.
back
Yeah,
and forth.
be more efficient with their road maintenance. We'll see.
Alright,
Really
that's-
wasn't
That was the
efficient.
goal of it. I mean, you don't need to spend every penny of it, you can
Yeah.
spend some of your vacation on this stuff too.
Yeah, I don't think there has to be.
Alright, something you can see, appreciate.
Right.
Something we'll decide when the time comes,
I
see
won't.
how much is coming
Yeah.
with the rest.
Are they gonna go to
Drug it out
the
to-
the sewer district?
Maybe some.
There's no change really
There's
in
no change
any of
in
the
any of them?
smaller
Okay.
special districts.
Okay. Alright.
well, thank you, everybody, appreciate your
Thank you, Jerry.
time,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
And Julia, every year I
Thank
say
you.
this, thank you, being so responsive to the residents. Well, the potholes
You're
we
always-
have.
Whenever we get any kind of pothole requests, whether state roads, county roads, or town roads, she's the first person that reaches out to all of our residents.
Great, no.
Yeah. She's a line of defense,
Really,
gets some
yeah.
angry calls. It's not easy answering phones when you deal with the public.
I know.
Well, she de-escalates them
She really
nicely.
does, it's that calm demeanor all the time, is just like. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Very good. Take care. Good night, everyone.
Mr. Assessor.
Mr. Assessor,
You guys wanna take a comfort break first?
don't let, like,
I
it's
have to
music
quickly,
people.
I have to quickly,
Yeah.
You are our
Yes is
comfort
the
break.
answer.
Okay, we're back.
Okay.
All right.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Mr. Assessor, how are you, sir?
Happy Boss's Day.
Is that what it is?
Oh, look at that.
My God, and we didn't do breakfast?
that.
Oh, man, you were in trouble.
Okay,
Another
so
Hallmark holiday.
my budget is fairly straightforward, as it always is. I can highlight that our department is the main revenue source for the town. At, collecting about $22 million, just under that. Some of the,
Yeah, you don't collect that.
You don't actually
well,
like that.
we create that.
Yes.
You're- He has a significant hand in
You
that.
send out the bills.
No, he doesn't even
No.
do that. No. He sets the values.
So the largest change year over year is our data software. We planned for it last year. There were some bumps in the road, and it looks like it's going to happen this year. We have our fingers crossed. New York State is even farther out than they had expected with ACES. We have PASS, which is Parcel Access System, which is how we catalog and maintain our inventory. The state software is called RPS version 4. They've been using Tyler Technologies to develop this new software for the state. It was supposed to be ready for their pilots, programs this November. At this point, through the assessors conference up in Lake Placid, we're told it may happen in 2025. Rob and I have
That's a
been
good
researching
state
other
project
options for this, and everything seems to run into a dead end. I will tell you that despite the fact that the support for our software is less than stellar, the software really is fantastic. It's very user-friendly, it's very easy to create reports for our residents and for our various boards. So that's that. I tried to offset that by eliminating a part-time position.
You talked about that last night, don't take
we're
credit.
on to you.
That
Just
was the one.
shifted it right over to the clerk, yeah.
Josh, let me ask you the data processing, so, the timeline was gonna be like 1 year from the time when they got the last guy to sign.
That's correct.
Has the last guy signed?
I'm not sure if the first guy is signed
Okay,
yet. We received the preliminary contract.
okay.
Keenan Bean made their comments, Glenn Sullivan made their comments, I submitted it back to the gentleman at SCA, and he turned it around pretty quickly, but there was only about 20% of the changes that we had asked for. So now it's
I was
in
gonna
this,
say, it turns around quickly and not a single change was made, that sounds like.
So as far as the budget, I'm just trying to think whether that'll be a 2020 expenditure or not. It looks like right now, if everybody signs by the end of this year, it would be.
correct.
My other thought was, I may look to take this out of, we have a capital project that we borrowed for some IT costs. This wasn't anticipated in that borrowing, but what was anticipated was a change in accounting software that there have been some developments with our current provider who we thought was disappearing. They are not, and they will have an upgrade to their current software. It's not ready yet, but they will have that. So it appears more than likely we are not switching accounting software systems, but maybe purchasing their upgrade, which would be significantly cheaper than buying a whole new package from a whole new provider. So we may have some money left that we had anticipated spending on accounting, and I may pull this out, and I'm gonna talk to Glenn to go over that capital and see if we can put that there and take it out of the operating, so. So, and what was that? It wasn't the whole 44,000, it was, what was the amount?
44,000 included the annual.
That included the annual,
Right, I
so.
wanna say it was about 32,000.
Oh, right, yeah, so I knew the annual was about 12, so it would be about 32,000 if I could reduce the operating by that amount,
Cool.
so.
You gonna take Hot to lunch?
He was gonna referee my soccer game.
There's a PSAT thing going on here.
That's much more important.
Other than that, if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer.
Or we could just make us some time.
There we
Make
go.
us have you
We can do
list.
that.
Is it, are they doing
Okay,
this here?
thanks very much.
Or is Nick or Ed
Take
coming?
care.
I don't know, Nick,
Maybe
Nick.
for next year we'll just rebalance.
Can you stick to that for it?
Don't they usually go first, the judge? I know it's late dance like this. Don't they usually like the first to come?
Who's next? I don't know what I did with my
Yeah.
agenda.
What's next?
Town, well,
Council-
town council.
Council's 10 to 10:15.
Over here.
Probably should have covered Ed last night while he was here.
Yeah, that would have been
Well,
good.
you know. Oh, hey, how are you? Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to. Yeah,
What would-
When is their, how long is their contract with us for? Can it be?
I'm not sure.
Okay, what I was asking, in the budget message, when I emailed it back to you guys, they're asking for a rate increase?
Yeah.
Why are we negotiating that as a part of the budget process as opposed to negotiating
we're
that
not-
through their contract?
We're not necessarily negotiating it, but that's what they're asking for, so
But it's sort of like, why do they come to us with that during budget preparation as opposed to when we're approving their,
Do I get the budget for it?
Yeah,
Yeah, isn't it
I mean,
appropriate in the
just-
budget
Just so that I know
Yeah,
what
what you're gonna
to put in
spend.
next year, I mean, if we negotiated it afterwards and I didn't have it in the budget, then I
Right.
don't have
Right.
the authority to.
that's fine, but I don't think we should be approving that absence of the,
They could always come out of the budget too.
what do you mean it could always come out?
I mean, you could always budget for it and then just remove it. Like
Yeah,
you may
no,
prefer- you may-
that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
but I didn't, it was included up front in Jill's budget message, and I just thought, I don't know if it makes sense to include it from a planning perspective, but it didn't feel like the right mechanism through which to
Yeah.
approve a rate increase,
Yeah.
is my point.
Right.
Does that make sense? I'm
It's
trying
a-
to be hostile.
It's really a limited impact in the budget, it's 3% and of just the retainer costs, they're not increasing the hourly, or they're not proposing to increase the hourly, just the retainer.
I mean, even with the department head increases too, we always do that, you add it to the budget, then we always talk
Yeah,
about
the
that
department
at the
head
time.
increases are, so,
Yeah.
we wanted to talk about that at a separate time. They're prepared, they're in the salary lines, but because you
That's
haven't
what
had
I'm
a
saying.
chance to review them, I did not include the
This is
salary
what-
schedule in this version, so that you guys have a chance to talk
Right,
about that
good. Hold on one
independently
second.
and not release that.
Right.
Just gotta step back.
The council's not ready, is the justice, they're probably not here, maybe. They should.
I know one of the judges had an appointment somewhere, I mean, they're, but,
Did we give them all raises, was it last year or the year before, in court
2 years
staff?
ago,
2 years
maybe.
ago?
So it's not good because he's about to pick up the phone from his office.
oh,
I mean, we can also
On
just,
speaker.
we can
well,
discuss,
I
well, we
mean,
can
they
also
can make
discuss
their,
when he's here.
they can make their pitch in an executive session one night, so, I mean,
Yeah.
that would be
That's fine.
contract, so they could make whatever pitch they wanna make, for planning purposes, I have it in the budget.
Or for that matter, when we're here next at a work session,
No, completely, yeah.
cause I don't wanna sit and spin our
Right.
wheels for
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the
30
Yeah,
judges,
it's fine.
frankly.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm just gonna ask for raises.
And we have time for preliminary budget discussion, there's not a whole heck of a lot that anybody asked for, there were 2 lines
Who are we referring to now?
totaling. The last topic here, preliminary budget discussions, a lot of times, if anybody has proposed something that was outside of the budget, the chief had those 2 lines that were my fault, totaling about $6,000.
I asked for,
Ike
uniform.
asked for uniforms for $500.
Well, but no, and they were also asking for the art center upgrades.
So I was going,
Hi,
what I
yes,
typically do then at this point is, we could talk about those, but then I will summarize those in a spreadsheet and give them back to you, and the effect that will have on the budget. If you increase these things, what will this do to the levy, what will this do to the rate?
And then we
So that
decide
decision
what we're
wasn't
gonna approve
intended
or
to be
not.
made today, it was just a discussion, and there weren't a ton of those.
But it's not just that, we can also decide something actually in the budget we don't
Right.
wanna do.
Oh, absolutely,
Like, for example, how many people we wanna bring on, if any,
Sure.
whether it's,
absolutely.
Who gets what?
I didn't know if you
Yeah.
guys were trying to catch a train or do whatever.
yeah, no,
because we're a
my,
little-
I still have plenty of time, but I don't wanna.
What time is this supposed to be over?
So let's
11
go
or
right
12?
11:30.
Okay, we'll do it on Tuesday, okay?
Well, I have 10:45.
No, cause I have,
I had
I have,
12.
I have justice court,
on my calendar too.
10:45 to 11, then preliminary budget decisions, but we're not gonna.
Oh,
make
that
some
was,
decisions.
okay, so I have what was in this press release,
I mean, I'm not ready to make a budget decision after sitting and listening to everyone.
Alright. Nick had it for next Wednesday, so forget it. That's not working. It's fine, he
Again,
can come the
that's-
next
I
day,
think
it's not a big deal.
we're not, yeah, we have plenty of time.
It's in the budget and they can,
Yeah.
you know, they can make.
Unfortunately, it
It's
doesn't
not
save us any
long,
time,
it's-
it doesn't save us any
yeah.
time if
Do
no
you
one's
know,
here.
Joe, I only asked and I don't know the length of their contract,
Whose contract?
Keenan Bean,
It's 2 years.
it was 2 years.
So when's that
So
expire?
when, yeah.
It would be up this December.
Right, okay, so
so
then that
we
makes
start
sense,
changing
if
it,
they,
yeah.
that actually makes sense then why they're
Yeah.
talking about rate increases right now.
Alright, so who's here judge-wise, anyone?
No, waiting for Judge Cross. I mean, I don't know this, I don't wanna be rude to them, I don't know that there's anything in particular that they asked for.
pretty, I mean, it's justice court, town judge is 2, court clerk 2,
Yeah.
pretty simple,
Yeah, no, literally dues, there's a 6.25% increase, from 1,200 to
And they're
1,275
increasing wages.
Well, you know, salaries, but it's contractual.
Is it? They're not.
Let's see what-
Clerks are-
Yeah,
clerks
no,
are-
sorry, clerk, well, I
clerks
don't
are
know what
union.
these are.
Yeah, the clerks are union.
Got some steel gums, I guess, if
She
you want.
raised the
Justice court, sorry.
part-time they usually have.
Give me one second. I was looking at anything. I apologize.
Be
The
careful.
clerks are union, but they're not under the town, they're under the judge, they're kind of like unique, kind of hybrid situation, the
It's
clerks.
weird, they do come off a list though, but they're appointed by the judge. They have civil service and union protection, but
But they're
it's
under a
weird.
separate line of,
Yeah, and they don't report to me, which has been a bone of, contention because.
but that's all municipalities.
Yeah, it's just a very odd thing. So when we get audited, if the audit is off, we get the comment, but yet.
Well, since, I will say this, I think, Long Island, is it Nassau, I don't know if something's true, they have district courts as opposed to these town courts. These town courts are just inefficient, just in general, across the board. And you probably, I don't know if you've ever been there, but you practice
Well,
privately, but like, you go to, I've been in front of farmers, I've been in front of plumbers. These are judges.
Yeah,
Because
they don't have to be.
Right, it's insanity.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to be a
Justice
lawyer, I
court,
mean,
you
in
don't have to
Westchester, because there's plenty of lawyers, but if I've been
You go
upstate,
out, you
like
don't
in
have to
Greene
be.
County,
Oh, wow.
and it's scary,
Yeah, you don't need
it's
to,
scary.
yeah.
And how do you expect a judge who's in his town with 3 cops, who's gonna really say, yeah, I think you pulled them over for the wrong reasons,
Yeah.
or,
So
Yeah.
you
You
It's
didn't really
literally
see it.
just whoever gets elected?
yeah,
Yeah.
you don't have to be,
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
So if you want, you
Don't
go,
catch
well,
up.
you can be the judge, I call you Robert.
Maybe.
But all kidding aside, there is no kidding, it's scary, but Nassau County
Maybe I
has
do have
district-
aspirations for higher office.
Yes, I want to be a judge in the village of,
So much power.
yes.
You really wanna be sheriff, don't you really wanna be sheriff?
No.
Come on,
No.
like the hat and the
Yeah,
car and the.
Oh, the hat.
Yeah,
See,
the
now
hat.
we know what Jill's attracted to.
Man in the hat.
I just heard him
She
like
loved,
talk about it last
she
night
loved
with,
Curious George, the man in the yellow hat.
Yes. With Chief Carroll last night and the
Yeah,
sheriff.
Freddie Squirrel was, he
Yeah,
was
I'm
a
telling you.
sheriff.
Where was he? In Dutchess?
That's just counting, yeah.
You wouldn't think that's a thing, but that's a thing.
Yeah, Dutchess County is,
Especially when he
It's
was
up
there like
there.
70s, 80s, 90s.
Oh, yeah.
Is there anyone else we can do while we're waiting for them?
That's it.
That's all there
Just
is.
sort
you
of
wanna
counts.
have the preliminary budget discussions?
Yeah, why
Yeah.
don't we go through it? Let's see.
Well, actually, we've done a lot of it.
So let's
Jeremy,
see.
did you wanna comment on any of the personnel? I mean, I went through.
Yeah, I just wanna go through, where's the,
Are we
where's the,
recording?
Okay.
where's the quick,
That was
are
Barbara's
we
back.
recording again, or I don't know if we went off, but are we recording again?
We're recording.
Okay,
Okay.
where's, is there,
Great.
oh, did you say that? Where, is there a quick thing to look at all of our, I know it's under Jill's,
All of
Get the
what?
words out.
to have like everything itemized, what in terms of personnel, instead of going and flipping through.
Oh,
I don't know if there's anything itemized, I mean, there's 4 positions, one is a police officer, 2 are senior office assistants, 1 being in the town clerk's office, and 1 in DPW, and the other is the Hamlet caretaker.
And what was the total compensation for them?
So the starting salary for the senior office assistant was like south of 42, it
40
was
something?
41 something.
right.
The Hamlet caretaker would,
One of the police officers was partially
For
covered
20,
because
20, yeah, the
the
senior.
SRO.
No, but
His
that was,
last
that
one
was,
was there.
no, they're not partially covered, the old police officer.
old-
you
Take
know what?
15% or 20%.
You know what?
Fifteen
Right.
office
Plus a new
assistant.
person.
Right.
the
but-
office assistant,
It's very low.
I think it was like
That's what we
45
were
or something.
putting back into
yeah,
the
you
clerk's
know what,
office.
you know why I had it low, because I have it apportioned, because I think we weren't gonna start that until Mary Ellen.
Crap.
I think I had that wasn't gonna be for the whole year.
Yeah, I
So I
want
think
that
you're right.
breakout for the 4 new.
Yeah, cause I think it's more than that, and it's.
Yeah, you're right, it is 57, cause I'm looking at
Yeah.
19,135, so
Okay,
yeah, those are each 57.
We were wrong on the salary,
Alright,
Office assistant.
57, yeah.
that's around $12,000, $15,000.
Yeah, the Hamlet caretaker is 41,
Yeah, cause that's a 1-1.
48,055.
And then what was the new officer?
Well, that's a bit of a,
But you're paying, we're.
71,
But we're paying 15% of the old officer, so that 85% of that comes off our rolls? Is that what's gonna happen? Because the school's taking that
oh,
responsibility?
Rob, I need you to sign the
The
SRO
the
agreement.
school, yeah,
It's in this.
we're actually getting significantly more than that, so
'Cause it's
what the
salary
school
plus fringe.
is,
Oh, sorry.
they're paying us for an officer at the top step. So they're paying us 85% of an officer at the top step, which is like 110 plus the fringe
Fringe.
benefits. So that works out, the school's gonna pay us 138, so,
138, they're paying us,
yeah,
and then we're adding one at 70.
71, 391.
So for the first, that's the first year, first step, but they increase.
Yeah.
Sorry, so what is it? Have you been typing them out? What are the?
We're all here.
Oh,
Everybody's coming in.
Alright.
Perfect, they just got one finish, so it's 138, we're getting paid.
Yeah.
71,391 we're paying out,
Yep,
but obviously, as Jill said, there's steps that are gonna go up.
yep.
Right, so the first year you're looking at a,
When does that salary reach roughly $100,000 for that officer?
The start of the fourth year.
what,
And what was the last one?
Hamlet caretaker, you've got
Office assistant,
two office assistants,
Police
that's
officer,
it.
oh, it was 2 office assistants.
Yep.
Good morning. Morning.
Two.
I just wanna go through I wanna go through
Sorry,
some
we're a
of
little
the
late.
equipment as well,
This is
just,
the,
we can run through the equipment numbers, who wanted what, just because it's all over the place.
How you doing? Good, how are you?
Good. Hello.
How are you?
Good. Thank you for the honor, Your Honor.
I'm sorry?
Your Honor, thank you for the honor.
He needs more coffee.
Yeah. Or less coffee.
That's without caffeine, traditional caffeine. How many diamonds?
Hey.
Okay,
I was
it's all
just
here.
finishing up a couple of tickets.
So we're gonna slash your budget to 0.
That's what I heard, yeah.
Justice in this
Yeah,
town.
we should be giving you guys back money, I take it.
I'm gonna put on a contingency.
That's right.
Hey, listen, everybody sees what's happening with all the changes in the law, and Kathy and I have like 4 days of training that we've got to go to before January 1st. Judge Sorkin is like the sitting judge at Woodfield Cottage with the new juvenile laws.
Oh, the raise the
He's
age,
sitting,
yeah.
he's sitting on all the arraignments from now till the end of the year.
Congratulations.
And last week Pleasantville had a
Yes,
17-year-old. There was no room at the inn, and they had a midnight arraignment, and the court clerk, the jail wouldn't take him. Well, you know all this stuff.
There's all sorts of credit for this fine, but there's all sorts of changes in the criminal justice system.
Right.
The jail wouldn't
Significant
take
changes.
him because he was under 19 years old, and the town was babysitting this kid until they could make
space.
arrangements for, so it's nuts. Not only that, this is like really minute and stupid. The state is asking us to do a seal order, Jeremy, on every traffic ticket, okay? So every traffic ticket that's dismissed, Kathy
reduced.
and I have to do a seal order on, or reduced, and send it to the police agent. The judge has to sign it, and we have to send it to the police agency. So just think about the mail bill, the stamp bill for the towns, just on something like that.
You know why, I mean, we're discussing it separate, why are they making you seals to ticket, parking
They
speeding
had told
tickets?
us, when Kathy and I were at the conference in February, and they told us And you can
Why?
imagine,
Most courts don't do it.
Yeah, but why? Is that, I
Some
don't know why you
legal-
seal tickets. It's not a
Reason,
crime.
nothing.
It's not a crime, it's nothing, yeah.
they want them sealed,
Right.
they want traffic tickets sealed.
Apparently it's been subject to discovery also.
Well, the partial seal with the reduction, so it's,
Hey, Judge.
What's the wire, Jeremy? I think in insurance related fender bender cases, it's been subject to discovery and so.
and yeah, and the rules, the new rules for discovery, it's like,
Really?
Alright,
okay.
it's good for me, it's proof of offense, I love it. Bad for, I think,
Everybody else. So, are you suggesting that we should be increasing your postage line?
Central
Yes.
services.
It's,
Is that the
office
you know, I
supplies?
don't know.
No,
What-
postage is in
you
my
know,
budget, central services,
Okay,
But
for the whole town.
it'll be significant.
it will be, it's,
We're going to do that.
we're talking about this, you know, the state wants
Well,
us
if
to
it's the law, I
seal
think
all
we should do
the
it.
traffic tickets now.
Well, that's, well, that's council.
But, you know, we meet and we talk about the budget, but if we don't mention this to you, you're not even aware of some of the things that the state is asking us to do, that towns have to foot the bill on, so.
Yeah, that's what it's called.
Do you have to go back to old ones that have been,
They'd like us to. We're hoping that they don't do that.
So, this is for moving violations or
Yeah,
moving violations?
Moving
So it's not
violations.
parking tickets, it's moving
not,
violations.
yeah.
So,
well, parking's local, so it's probably not put in anywhere local.
right, I'm just trying to figure out like, so seatbelt? Is still considered, yeah?
How about a bigger court like Southeast, that has all that traffic?
We're supposed to be
they've got?
doing it
They
too.
have to do
Most
it too?
courts have not done it.
And when was the effective date of this?
I don't know. We were just told to start. We didn't start ourselves, so.
Is that town issue tickets for moving violations and county and
Yeah.
and state?
Everything.
Every police agency. And so then we have, you know, so then we're, you know, the judges have to sign the seal orders, and then we're sending a copy,
Get them a stamp.
Yeah,
putting the
right.
seal on it, and we're sending it to the police agencies all over, so, I mean, we have, Kathy is scheduling 6 months out on state police tickets. That's how many we have, and the drawer is full of state police tickets to be scheduled, so think about it, all those tickets that are, you know, they come here, they 99% of the time get a reduction, so that's a 160/55 seal, the partial seal. It was this and reduced to that, DWIs, I mean, all that are getting the seal.
Okay. Well, that's okay.
Alright, so,
Okay.
are we going through the budget?
Yep.
You wanna start? I mean, I can ask questions, but
Do you wanna go through it, or do you want us to just ask questions?
Well, I don't think there's too much that's controversial, so why don't you just fire away?
one thing I was curious about are the books, why the 50% books and subscription increase? What is that for?
Well, our department's the only department that gets a hard copy of the legal publications,
You get,
Really?
you still get, why not, isn't it cheaper to do it online, like
but
you know.
we get one set, and the judges utilize them all the town,
Well, it's a
all the time.
subscription service, first of all, and they keep raising the prices.
But it's not cheaper to just use the online version?
Yeah, but when he's sitting at the
Or-
bench, he can't, he
You
can't
can, but they
for
don't,
that.
it's not really a shortcut,
Yeah.
I mean, price wise. We asked about that a couple of years ago, and I think you get online access if you subscribe to the hard copy, it was like a tie-in sale.
We do use it a lot and move them around. I take them home over the weekend, I bring them on the bench,
Well, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
sometimes I even bring them back.
And the salary adjustments are for,
It's just contractual.
That's contractual.
They increase
Contractual
overtime a little bit
adjustments.
because I think the
Percentage is higher.
yeah, the salaries go up
You know,
and the overtime goes up.
you know I love you guys, but I gotta bust your chops for a second, because I do, like, why not get like a Westlaw or something like that, you have your, and if you have a computer, well, that's a separate issue, but it's so easy just to search and do it that way.
Yeah, I use my computer at home when I'm writing things a lot, but what you don't get is the commentary and the case citations that you get in the pocket parts, which can save a lot of time, and they're very helpful.
Yeah. I would personally, for whatever it's worth, need training on Westlaw. It's so much easier just to go to the book, find the statute, go into the pocket part, etc. It's just reading it.
I'll leave you guys alone.
I was gonna
Here we go.
I want you to seal my part, I wanna seal my ticket too, okay?
It's
generational.
It's generational,
Okay.
sorry. I'm on this side of the table with them.
Mr. Millennial over here.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
I mean, when you're on the bench, sometimes it actually helps to have the book right there.
Right,
so
right,
you
yeah.
don't slip up.
Someday when you're on the bench, Joe.
Yeah. In Green
Upstate,
County.
that's what I meant, obviously upstate.
You know, we used to have,
As sheriff.
the town attorney used to get a complete set of everything as well.
Yep.
And we cut that out,
Yep.
and that was a big saving.
I think maybe even the police department did as well years ago, and we've got it, we get the set, and the town attorneys can certainly use it, and the police department will utilize it. And the judges utilize it frequently, Jeremy. If you stop by their chambers, there are volumes on
Yes,
their desks.
I remember going.
And the pages are marked.
Not what you guys
They
do,
like the
right?
books.
We have a library in my office, I don't think anyone takes, other than taking pictures
Yeah.
next to them.
Yeah, they're good for taking pictures. It's a good background.
Yes, exactly, it's a good background.
We do use it. Regularly.
Alright,
That's what we non-attorneys always assumed about you all.
Yeah.
They were just for photos.
Exactly. Some,
No, some people.
they're hollowed out with like a pick, to escape and. Alright, I have no,
Alright, sounds good.
okay.
anything for us, anything for us?
I'm sorry.
Anything for us, any,
I don't think so, I
Well,
like to
the
be
town
able to.
looks great, I think.
please continue.
Stay.
I know you've been taking a big hit,
I think a butt's coming just for the record.
but
Well, actually,
it looks beautiful.
Yeah, although
Thank
it's
you.
a little rough there between
Not there.
like the Starbucks and the
Yeah,
gas
it's
station.
so weird by Starbucks.
It's being
Yeah.
changed.
I mean, I.
You know, and where some of the grates are, it looks like they need to do some additional stuff.
Oh, that's being retained.
And don't think that we didn't hear it too, okay, because when people come in with parking tickets, we certainly
Yeah.
heard it, but,
I'm
you
sure.
know, it looks beautiful, we're almost there.
Yep.
On the way home, I'm gonna stop at Family Bridges.
It looks so
When they
nice
pave the
over there,
road, I'm
they-
going in there. It's like-
Please, please go in, do not tell him that you would have not gone in there because of the road, whatever you do. Just say, I've been
Well, the
busy.
sidewalk and everything, I mean, it's just.
Yeah.
I can
Tell
go
him how
to my yoga
amazing
class.
that
Tell
police
us not to watch
patio
this
is.
video either.
But we, well, Jill knows this, and the summer interns worked on this, the parking lots need new signs, they need new lines. I mean, once the downtown is done,
It's on our list.
we've got to overhaul the parking lots and parking areas for people, so we don't have issues when they come in with a ticket.
Right, especially Allen Place, I think it's a disaster back there.
In all fairness, I mean, with signs missing, you know.
I think some of the handicap spots were messed up and you didn't know where they.
Yeah, I think, and I know that the interns over the summer in the town clerk's office spent a lot of time going through the parking lots, but, once the town, is done and everything is done, that should be taken care of as well.
So how long until they get all that junk out of the parking lot?
They're doing it actually next couple of weeks.
Yep.
Cause I mean, Thursday nights, I could barely find a place to park.
Well, so, once they get out of there, that's where the basketball court's
Yeah,
going.
I know that, I thought
So it's going to be the front area that gets cleaned out and it's gonna be a gravel parking lot and that's where they'll end up parking. And they can take the elevator up.
Well, actually, you can't do that because of the security, cause they lock
That
the
door's
door.
locked. The store's locked down.
They make everybody come in the front, that
That's going to
door.
be an issue.
We're gonna have signs.
People
Just
just
signs.
I know,
have to
but people
walk
have to be able
around.
to walk, so.
Yeah.
Right, no.
I mean, they need some signs.
Sign is to say additional parking in front or something.
Well, yeah, but when you come up the elevator, you're not coming up the stairs.
It's closed on
Yeah,
Thursday.
it's closed on Thursdays.
The elevator's not in use on
Yeah.
Thursday.
Cause they run everybody through the security when they come in, the main door on the upper floor. And they don't want people coming in through the back.
Well, if you guys can't get a spot, a good spot to park is in the commuter lot. And that little teeny triangle there, that's right next to the path.
Well, the
then you
summer
can
with
just take the path
softball
right
was
in.
crazy
Yeah,
on
it'll be
Thursday
better, it'll be
night.
better now.
Right.
Now,
Right.
not so much,
Right,
Yeah, softball should park.
but that's our issue, softball.
right.
Okay.
Not softball.
What an ordeal.
Thank you.
Good to see all of you.
The softball people, we could encourage them, it's just the A League on Thursday nights, we could encourage them to park at Bell
Yeah,
on
or,
Thursday
yeah,
nights.
or they can park
out
in,
front.
they'll be able to park in front,
Right.
and that's what we
A
should
lot of
encourage.
I don't know if anyone can do anything about this, and you're probably aware, but on GPS and Waze, they send you to Bethel. Okay, and I've tried to get that straightened out because we
Send you to
have,
Bethel if you're trying to get where? Here?
Yeah.
yes,
200
when
South
you put
Greeley.
in 200 South Greeley Avenue on Waze or GPS,
Yeah, I
it
think I
takes
noticed
you
that
to
actually.
Bell,
I
to
done my thing,
Bethel.
I thought it was a signal,
And-
it's
200
freaking out
South
at me.
Bedford Road.
Yeah.
Not South Greeley?
And so it's a big problem for us on a Thursday night especially, when people call us and like, I'm in the dark, I don't know where I am. And so we tell everyone to Google the Chappaqua Library, but if
Yeah.
anybody knows how to get that corrected, I do it in the morning just to see if it's been corrected, cause I've contacted Waze and they said
Mine
they
just
addressed
says
it.
I'm actually sitting in 200, I put it in on Waze and it says you are 0 miles away. So,
That did happen to me recently.
and the
Yeah,
map
I've
is
had-
correct.
I have had that reported too.
Maybe it's Google
Yeah, a
Maps.
lot of the
Somebody
new
that came for a
hires,
meeting
they
with
get
me.
Yeah,
lost.
Waze has us in the right
Because it
spot.
takes
I
them
thought I
over
lost my
there.
reception, thought it was freaking out at me.
Well, I Waze every morning
No,
and it
200
does
South
it,
Greeley Avenue, 0.1 mile.
it takes me,
Mine just says no, mine just showed me the map right here. That's not Waze,
So
so
if
I'm sure.
anybody could,
That's my Waze.
to get that
Oh,
corrected.
this is Waze?
Yeah.
Alright, it's good to know.
Alright,
Alright, take care, thank
Maybe you have to
This is-
update your
wait,
Waze.
wait, no, sorry,
Maybe you have to update your Waze,
like Jeremiah, I'm sorry.
cause mine will just work.
Right, do you wanna go back to,
So Jeremy, regarding the personnel stuff, and I don't know if we need to go into executive session, but are there particular questions that you have, or what?
No, I just
what's
wanna, understand what, just in terms of what the cost is for each person. So I wanted a breakout of that and then a breakout of, instead of going back and forth of just certain things that people wanted, so someone wanted a new vehicle, a new, like for example, I think it was Ike who said we needed the new,
Right, so there's about 145,000 in Ike's budget, 73,000 was a Mason dump, and
right, so I didn't write that all out, so I just wanted.
Uniforms and
yeah, the uniforms was 500. The other 70 plus was for field maintenance equipment for the most part. It was a tractor,
Right.
it was a field rake, it was a sand spreader on the back of his truck.
And that was,
that was all incorporated in 245 though, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I have the
Yeah.
breakdown of what they
I
are.
thought, yeah, just looking for a breakdown so I can just see it, irrespective of what it is.
That's pretty good.
Okay.
And then he was talking about the capital improvements to the,
So you're gonna get us that list?
Yeah,
Yeah, that'd be great, you know, I don't need to see him, get us the list.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone list.
Yeah, and the other thing, and Ivy, you mentioned that, and I was gonna suggest that too, and here's a thought, if I can shift that, might have a limited budget impact, if we could shift that assessor software into the capital project, it would give me another $32,000 without really affecting the budget. If we wanted to do those capital projects for the art center was about $48,000. It was to paint it and to replace the windows.
So we
I
have
think
the
they had
money
one
for the
quote,
windows.
yeah, so you get close to that. So I can lay all that out for you and
Sorry, you do that as a capital?
no, we would do it out of the
as
operating. It was
Yeah.
discussed
It
as
just
part of the
happened to be
capital, but
listed on
I
the
see.
thing.
Okay.
so I can lay that out what that impact would look like in the next version of the budget.
Okay, great.
I will also have to come up with some numbers for the fire protection district to show you guys what that's gonna look like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's gonna be
That we should
Let's-
talk about that right now,
Yeah.
because we're being taped.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe we also just wanna lay out for the board the differential with the e-newsletter and Code Red, just what that differential's gonna be, just so that we see what the what the overage is, what the surplus is gonna be, so when we talk to NCCMC, we know what the budget, that budget looks like.
Yeah, I feel like that, I didn't actually know we were changing that over, I don't know who had those discussions, but we didn't have it
Well,
here.
we didn't
No,
have.
no,
it.
We definitely did.
Not necessarily, yeah, I mean, it's an option that.
Talked about it.
Ju- just an
Yeah, I
option.
know, the way you're talking about it sounds like it's done, like yesterday
no,
you
no,
said,
no,
oh,
no,
well,
no.
they're doing this, and we never actually discussed it, maybe you and Ivy did, but we didn't discuss it as a town
It
board.
was done in conjunction with the new website as far as the capabilities and potentials, money savings that we can
Right.
get from.
So we've been paying, taking
Yeah.
$1,000 a month, about $12,000 a year, which remains in the budget for next year. I think the figure that NCCMC said was that they could do it for about $4,000. So that was just their proposal. I was to understand Taken Steel was only a one-year deal expiring at the end of this year, that we weren't planning to renew with them.
No, that
So-
wasn't true.
Well, the board will make a decision one way or the other, so, that's not.
It was a one-year deal, but then we were gonna revisit it.
Right.
Okay, well, the 12,000 remains in the budget for that hasn't been removed, so that can be a discussion. I mean, there's still funding for a newsletter,
Right,
in whatever
and-
form that takes place, NCCMC through the new website, it was.
But maybe we should just explain to Lisa how that can be run out of
Sure.
the
Well, and I
current
wanna see
website.
examples, if they've done a newsletter before, like, I'd like to have some information before decisions made without discussion.
Yeah, and also evidently the new website has the ability to function like a Code Red. It's included in the price of what we're already paying,
It's a little additional,
is it?
yeah, I think you.
Well, most of the thing about, the thing about the new website, I mean, first of all, what's the name of the company, Civics Plus or something? It's-
Civic Plus.
So it's made for governments, it's a platform for governments, and what it does, which is something that I actually talked about 6 years ago, but you could sign up for, the information gets pushed to you what you want. So if
Right,
you want emergency alerts, you sign up for it, if you want agendas, you sign up for it, if you want the newsletter, you sign up for it. And all the information's pushed from the website, where right now what we're doing is essentially pushing it from independent sources
Right.
and then posting it on the website. It just, and they know that, the Civic Plus platform realizes that communities need information disseminated, like e-newsletter information, they know that they need code red type of alerts, emergency alerts, sent. So the platform has the capability to do all those things. So that's the only reason we talked about it as potential savings. I mean, listen, I love the newsletter, but the platform is really great, and it should be explored as far as,
Yeah,
but it's
I
more
think we have
efficient
to have
also,
the
because
discussion
everything that
actually
lives
see it.
there, and it gets blasted out accordingly. It's just a smarter approach.
Yeah, but people love the
No,
newsletter,
you
so I
can't.
wanna
I mean, I
make
would never
sure
be in
that it's
favor.
done
I agree.
appropriately and actually see it and what they're
Right.
offering and.
I would never do anything to stop it, it's an option for the newsletter. And definitely for code red alerts, because it has emergency alerts already,
Right,
Yeah.
so,
and
yeah.
you're just doing a reverse. And we could move the list over to the website, the email list.
Yeah, right.
So, something that.
But all those funding sources are still included in the budget for
Right,
20.
nothing has been removed,
So Code Red's still there, Ticket's still there, so, or a funding source for the e-newsletter is still there.
It was
still
mentioned as a
alive.
potential cost savings, but not,
It hasn't been removed.
no.
Right, which it shouldn't be, cause we need to have a discussion about it.
Right. Well,
Not necessarily who's running it, but we need to, I mean, the dollar amount needs to be there until we made a decision we're gonna decrease the dollar. Or change it.
Anything else? Okay.
Okay. So now we're not meeting till Tuesday, right?
Right, we have a construction meeting tomorrow, we're putting a punch list together. Leo gave me a significant one, I'm asking him to add to his.
He gave you a punch list?
Yes, he gave me a punch list of things, I've added, I got a punch list from, Les Jardins. Who evidently accessed it through maybe you, Lisa, you had information that you pushed out to people?
I did.
Yeah, they followed your thing, so perfect, worked great, so she gave me a laundry list of stuff. Also, Squires had a couple things about the bricks sort of being slanted. He was concerned about, so I'll have a look at that. And, yeah, I just wanted to make sure, like, Tara at Minkel was concerned about the exterior of the building where they,
Right.
damaged the molding, that needs to be fixed. Vinny still has a couple things outstanding, I wanna make sure that's taken care of, the historical society's taken care of. And we have all these, squares with cracks in them that have to be addressed.
And residents can email fixit@mynewcastle.org.
Yeah, we're putting it together, and this punch list is going to be continuing, it's not like once
Yeah, with 2-year
ALQ
warranty.
takes and cleans out the front and the back, that they're not coming back to take care of things, they certainly will be, so. We just want to assemble the list for them, but while they're here, I'd like to try to get as many issues as possible addressed.
And when are they fixing the sidewalk in front of Starbucks?
They're actually waiting on the final plans, and I don't think they were received yet, I have to check my email. They were supposed to be in, we will double check tomorrow morning, at the construction meeting, but that's one of the things that we're waiting on. That, and there's one more, pedestrian beacon that has to be, installed down there.
Yep.
And I think once all of them are in, then the state will agree to, turn everything on. Traffic,
Okay.
should be excited about.
But they're supposed to power it up though this week, according to the 2-week look at it.
Right, because they're expecting that pedestrian beacon to be installed. It doesn't quite look like the other one, but that's not a problem. Oh, while I got you here for 2 seconds, the pedestrian beacons up at Lang's and also at the trailway. Yeah, so do you have any issue, do you care whether or not they're galvanized steel? The ones up by Lang's are gonna be solar panels.
Yeah, great.
Easier to install them, we don't have to deal with conduits and Con Ed and any of those other delays. Do you mind that they're not black fluted and that they're galvanized steel?
It's
Okay.
not part of the,
No, it's fine,
anyway.
and
Yeah,
also
theirs is
at the
okay.
trailway, 133,
that's okay.
one side is actually in the sun, so we're gonna try to do a solar there, and one side's gonna have to be hardwired, just because there's a beautiful tree that it sits underneath, but we're not taking down the tree. Okay, alright, okay, just wanna make sure that was okay with you guys, alright, thank you.
It's been fun.
Okay, alright, and next town board meeting, there'll be a resolution
Go to city?
for DOT, but we will agree to the maintenance of these
Think about
pedestrian
21
beacons. DOT requires that in order for them not to be the ones that are installing and maintaining.
When you said the ones here don't match each other,
Oh, there is one that we're waiting on,
Yeah.
that will be in
you just said
December.
they don't match.
No, so there's one, that's an
Because it's not coming
outlier,
till,
it's not coming till December, so we're getting just a substitute one.
Oh, but it will eventually match.
Absolutely,
Oh,
I just don't
okay,
wanna wait until
okay.
December.
Got it.
Send this via email too.
It's Bart, well, that's Bart too, yes, yeah, sure. So yeah, it will, but it's just that if we don't install it, then they won't turn on the traffic light.
no, I just wanted to
Yeah,
make
yeah,
sure
no,
it
no,
was
it's-
eventually gonna happen.
Yes, absolutely. It's
Okay.
just that it's like a 6-week lead time and or 12-week, it's ridiculous how long it takes.
I'm sorry, we had a motion to adjourn, did you know?
Um,
So moved.
Thank, yay, thank you.
Aye.